Hello and welcome back to the Trick Play Podcast on the Fresh Take Network. I'm Simon Chiskovsky here with Caleb Peterson, and shortly we'll be breaking down all the sports-related news, rumors, and drama that you will want to hear about. And we've got a terrific week up ahead as we'll be starting off with NFL free agency and going through all of the crazy things that happened over the last little bit, going into literally each and every trade pretty much. I think we did a killer job covering almost everything, and we're joined by Josh Arbuthnot, who joined us to break everything down. It was a great segment. Make sure to watch that. Then we get into the Canadian NHL Cup curse, whether any of those teams have a chance at potentially breaking it, and the NHL trade deadline. So we've got a loaded week on both the NFL and NHL side. Make sure to check us out on YouTube, Fresh Take Network, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and everything else, as we have new content coming out every single week on each and every one of those platforms. Caleb, are you ready to go?
Absolutely. So, as most of you probably know, NFL free agency, or more accurately, the legal tampering period, just happened. So we got a lot of people changing places. We kind of talked about free agents last episode, but now they're actually signed to teams. We got a whole bunch of moves. I won't spend too long introing this because we've got a shit ton of stuff to get to. But before that, we got Josh back. Last time he was here, talking about coaching carousel, talking some more NFL today. So happy to have Josh on the program, and we'll jump right into it. Josh, I'll start with you. What do you think about the Brian Burns trade? Brian Burns to New York for 2nd and 5th round pick.
Yeah, very surprising. I mean, Thibodeau and him is really scary now for the Giants. They got a lot of other things to figure out. I don't know what's going on with the Panthers. I do like what they've done on the offensive tackle side of things. I think that's going to help Bryce out. But, you know, we all know what we heard the last few deadlines, right? They had chances for multiple first-round picks for this guy.
Yeah.
At the very least, just re-sign him and then let him run wild again next year and then bring his value back up again. To get a 2nd and a 5th for this guy, I believe is what? He's only 27? I believe he's one of the better defensive players in the league. And, you know, I would say, like, most people don't know who Brian Burns is much is because the Panthers just aren't a sexy team you really want to talk about that much. But he is one of the best defensive players in the league, and now he gets to go to New York. And trust me, people, when he's in New York, are going to know the name Brian Burns. It's an absolute steal for the Giants. It's something they needed because they've had a rough offseason. I don't know what's going on in Carolina right now. That is the leader right now. You guys know the NHL side better than me, so I can't comment on anything on that side. But I think in the 4 major sports, at least right now, that's got to be the leader for the worst franchise in 2024 so far.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that because, I mean, it's not just the Brian Burns stuff in isolation. You talked about the multiple first-round picks they're missing out on. If you kind of combine that with some of the moves they've had, you've got the Bryce Young trade, which obviously giving up what turned into the number 1 pick. You've got only getting a 2nd rounder for CMC, only getting a 2nd rounder for Brian Burns. Even the guy behind you, Simon, was commenting about it on Twitter. Luke Combs was even he was upset about what the Panthers were doing. I don't know. It's at the point where you kind of knew it was going to happen. I'm sure he didn't want to come back to Carolina. The biggest thing was just like they should have taken the offer from the Rams when they had it. And now where they're at the point of no return, I guess this is the most they could do. Probably should have re-signed him, like you said, but who knows if that was even on the table from him at that point, because they're just a complete dumpster fire of an organization. And I don't know, like, yeah, they've improved their offensive line, but the rest of that team's not looking great. So I don't know how developing Bryce Young is going to go. I have faith in Dave Canales, but I don't know. That's just a rough organization right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's crazy to me that we're hearing that they're potentially going after Chase Young now as a replacement.
And Mike Williams.
Yeah, like the fact that they're still trying to build with, like, I wouldn't call Chase Young quite veteran yet, but they're trying to still add that kind of depth despite getting rid of Brian Burns and not wanting to sign him. It's insane to me. And, I mean, you mentioned it, but the package they got for him is depressing as hell. I mean, they definitely could have gotten more, and that Giants D-line is scary as hell now. That's going to be very, very terrifying to watch next year. I'm actually excited to watch that team.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least on defense they've got that. If we want to kind of, I'm just gonna jump all over the place and transition where I see fit because we've got like 25 things to go on. But speaking of the Giants, they lost their franchise running back in Saquon Barkley, headed to the Eagles. Let's see if I can see that. 3 years, $37 million for Saquon. Josh, how do you feel about that deal for both the Eagles and the Giants?
I mean, it's weird. Like, if you're going to let him go, then go and, go maybe get one of these running backs in the draft. I mean, there's not a lot of, it's not a core running back draft, but there is people that people like Brooks and people like Blake Corum, for example, quite a bit. But I didn't get just letting him walk out the door. I mean, maybe it was a similar thing to Jacobs with Vegas, where they just, couldn't connect on the money side of things, and then he decides to go to the Eagles, make Jason Kelsey rethink about retiring now. All of a sudden, it's fantastic for Philly. For the Giants, I mean, they bring in Devin Singletary, but we'll see how he goes. It's a mixed bags there. Both the two teams in that division right now, with the Cowboys and the Giants, you really wonder what they're doing offensively with the moves that they've been making the last few days here, comparably to their counterparts right now. And Philly just loading up again, getting a great guy in Barkley. And you look at the run per average, I think in DPA, they were top 10 in running last year, the last 2 years, and that was with Miles Sanders and DeAndre Swift. And now you bring in a guy like Saquon Barkley that has the absolute capacity to be the best running back in the league. All respect to CMC. He has that capacity to be the best running back in the league behind that O-line that has the tush push, even without Jason Kelsey. It's a really scary scenario now. Plus, you have the read options that you're going to be able to have, the threat of Hurts being able to run and the threat of Barkley being able to run. That's like, and you really look at the quarterback play that Barkley's had with New York. He had washed up Eli Manning. Now he's had Danny Dimes. I think he had like a cup of coffee with Tyrod Taylor there. Geno Smith, I think, was there for a second with him. He's never really had like an all-pro level quarterback to be with him. So that completely changes everything now for Saquon.
Yeah, and I mean, you can kind of see the I think it's a steal, honestly, and it's a great way to kind of take advantage of how undervalued running backs are, is to get a guy like Saquon Barkley, where yes, he's a running back, but I think he's a lot more than that. We kind of saw that with CMC, where the Niners only had to give up a second rounder for him. And I think Saquon can have a similar impact, because I mean, 3 years, $37 million, in the grand scheme of things, is not that much. Because when you look at it in comparison to other contracts, like receiver contracts, would you rather have a Saquon Barkley or like a Gabe Davis, who's who I think got around the same amount? And you can kind of see, like, I think you see the sentiment shift around the Eagles too, where that whole kind of how their season ended is kind of starting to wash into people's mouths a little bit, with how I see them being talked about again, where they feel revitalized. They made the Barkley signing is the big thing. Getting a couple pieces on defense too, Bryce Huff, CJ Gardner-Johnson, like getting him back. It's clear that they're trying to reload, and I think they're doing it in a really smart way.
Well, think about what they've actually lost.
Time will tell.
Other than Jason Kelsey.
We thought this would be the story last year, where we thought they would be fantastic again, and they completely crapped the bed. But who knows? This is a good move and a good start.
Yeah, you bring that up with the crap in the bed, and this is a lot of pressure now on Nick Sirianni now. Like, if he doesn't deliver next year, then he's out. And the shadow and the hoodie of Bill Belichick is lurking over two teams in that NFC East with the Cowboys and Philly. Of Belichick, just his shadow lurking over either one of those teams of potentially coaching them next year. So both of them, it's really a Super Bowl or bust. And NFC, I think there's a few teams that improved quite a bit and found some pieces there. So I don't know necessarily if it's much of a layup for some of these teams. I think, the weird thing is we're going to get to some of these NFC teams, and I know you said you're shifting, but there's always that thing of like 4 teams miss the playoffs every single year. I don't know if that's the case for the NFC as much as like there's going to be a shift of teams. And then, like maybe an Atlanta and New Orleans flip, and then maybe a team like Seattle flips with the Rams. But other than that, like, I don't know how much is going to really flip around in the NFC next year with all the moves that's been made. So we'll see what happens
out here.
We got some bad headphone connection.
Yeah, my headphones are terrible. They always like
I told you
Every 2
Seattle was
minutes
going to
they
make the
disconnect.
playoffs, and you just got way too excited. Your brain burst.
Yeah, I know. I got way too excited and disconnected my headphones.
Yeah.
But no, to that point, I do think that's that's probably true in terms of just a shifting of where we see everybody, because it is really just a lot of the kind of middle ground teams getting stronger, and a lot of like teams like the Cowboys kind of falling off, not making any signings.
Yeah.
But I'll kind of shift things a little bit. We'll talk about another NFC team. We get the Eagles connection in here. Former Eagles running back, DeAndre Swift going to the Bears. Now I think this one's interesting. This is one of my least favorite signings.
That was weird.
I think it didn't make a whole lot of sense. It happened really quickly in free agency, which is weird. I didn't think he'd be a priority for any teams. Apparently he was for Chicago. Do you feel the same kind of way, Josh, in terms of this being a bit of a head scratcher?
I was surprised because Jacobs had been seen to be so connected to them, and then they went out the box and got Swift. And as a Raider fan, I'm like, okay, sweet, Jacobs does not go in there. And then later I got sad, but that was a little bit of a head scratch, especially because I didn't think the running game was necessarily an issue with them, with Roshan Johnson and with Khalil Herbert. I thought both were pretty decent fits at running back. Swift is a good running back, but I didn't think, and even having Dante Foreman, who was injured, but I do think he's a good back. He's still a free agent on the market. I think some team will get a steal getting him now in free agency on the cheap. But I didn't think running back was a need that they had to get. But, they figured with wherever they're going here in their future, whether they're going to go with Caleb or Marvin Harrison or whatever they're going to do, who knows, with the Bears, that they had to strike forward and get that, other running back to really hit the mark. So, yeah, it was weird they came out the mark, but Swift is a good running back, and it's a nice fit in that offense that's really rounding out nicely in free agency here.
Yeah, it really is, and we'll get to, maybe we can get to the other move they made in a second here, but I think, I don't know, I think I somewhat agree in terms of their running attack being pretty decent. I do also understand the need to try to go out and get a little bit of a bigger name, a little bit more of a high impact guy, aside from Khalil Herbert and Roshan Johnson. Because I think we even talked about this a little bit on our last podcast, was identifying that as a bit of a need for them. But DeAndre Swift is not the direction I would go. Like, DeAndre Swift feels like such a marginal upgrade from what you had. If you're getting some of the other guys that were out here, I understand it. But like paying him that much money, signing him for 3 years, like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me. He had a great season in Philadelphia, but I think a lot of that was a product of his surroundings in terms of the offensive line he had and the system he played with that was just designed for the big kind of bruising back like him to go in and get a ton of yards.
Yeah, we talked about their O-line, right?
Yeah. It's the kind of thing that he's not going to have as much in Chicago, and that kind of scares me a little bit. I don't necessarily see him as a running back that can thrive if the surroundings around him aren't very good.
They still have the worst running depth in that division.
Yeah.
As far as running back rankings, right? You'd probably go Lions 1, Packers 2, and then probably Vikings 3, and then 4.
Yeah. Especially here, maybe this is a good point to transition into Vikings and Packers, because they, Vikings and Packers, I think we kind of link those together just because Aaron Jones says goodbye to the Packers and goes to the Vikings on a 1-year, $7 million deal, and then the Packers replace him with Josh Jacobs.
With all the moves that I've
those
seen,
two moves and that kind of.
With all the moves that I've seen,
that?
Aaron Jones, that one I almost completely forgot about. Like when you mentioned that the Vikings were third on your list, I honestly thought that was weird. I was thinking to myself, I don't even, Cam Akers? For a second, it took me a second, but yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Like that absolutely changes that Vikings team. I mean, we don't really know who their starting quarterback will end up being.
Probably J.J. McCarthy.
You think so?
I'm penciling in J.J. McCarthy, Drake May right now.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever it ends up being, that Vikings offense, depending on who their quarterback is, might end up looking actually pretty dangerous. I think they'll be a fun team to watch.
They did some good things defensively too. Overall, I mean that NFC North, everyone just has the Lions going. I have right now the Packers winning the division right now, but man, that division is a tough division. I mean, we still don't know what the Bears. Just to go back to the Bears, I don't know what's going on in this Justin Fields situation. I think that's the hottest conversation you'll have with your friends right now. of what to do with Justin Fields. I think we're at the mark now. Like there's just no market for the kid. There's no market. They want a second, but no team's going to give them a second because they know they have to get rid of the guy. So why would we give you a second when he's your problem? He's not ours, and we don't know fully what he is yet. Plus, he's in his final year of his rookie deal, and then we have to pay him. So why would I do that when I can take a chance on Michael Penix or Bo Nix or go crazy and maybe see if Jordan Travis and then me is okay?
Yeah. I don't know. I do think I've always been a big Justin Fields supporter in terms of, I think any team, like giving up a second round pick for Justin Fields doesn't feel that crazy to me. Like I get what you're saying. It's a terrible situation for them because at this point, everybody kind of knows that they're drafting Caleb Williams and everybody kind of knows that they're trying to trade him, which depreciates his value a lot, I think. But if I'm a team and the price for him, it's like nobody's biting on a second round pick, I'd absolutely throw a third round pick at a guy like Justin Fields because I feel like the longer we go away from having watched him play, it's like he was actually relatively like he was pretty good. It's not like he's a guy like
the second half of the season he was very good.
Absolutely, it's not like because you think back to I was listening to another NFL podcast that compared this to the Sam Darnold trade to the Panthers, and I believe Sam Darnold got a second, and Sam Darnold was a complete flameout in New York.
Saw ghosts.
Fields hasn't been that. Yeah, he's exactly. We haven't seen that from Fields. Fields has been up and down. He's a bit mercurial in terms of like you don't know what you're going to get from him week to week, but the promise is there, and in a way that we never saw with Sam Darnold. I don't know. I just think he's being really undervalued, and I think that whatever team trades for him, whatever team gets him, is going to get something super special. Honestly.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to get to the AFC just yet because we're still in the NFC, but I know my Raiders were connected to him for a second, and it seems like the negotiations broke down pretty quick, and that's when the Gardner Minshew signing happened. We'll get to them in a bit, but there's still a market out there. I mean, you look at a team like New England, they could absolutely be a landing spot. I am shocked that Denver has not been part of this conversation at all. Like Denver right now, their quarterback is Jarrett Stidham, and you have teams like the Vikings that are going to be drafting ahead of you. Vegas is said to be going to be very aggressive in this draft, and it sounds like Denver is just like, oh, we'll just wait. Like you're going to wait. You're going to be looking at.
You're running out of quarterbacks. You're running.
Yeah, you're going to be looking at Bo Nix. Who I like Bo Nix, but Vikings now got that Texans pick. They're going to be able to trade up right away. And it could be too. Caleb is. Some of these teams might just wait to see how the draft pans out on draft day and then go for Justin Fields after that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Like, let's say Vegas, for Vegas or Denver, for example, the board doesn't go the way they wanted to go. Vegas has been looking at some corners, Brian Murphy from Texas, for example. They take him and like, you know what? Okay, we got our defensive player we wanted. We didn't. We thought maybe, Drake May would fall or maybe J.J. McCarthy would fall to us. We're not sure about Penix with the knee and Bo Nix. Who knows? You know what? Bears, let's talk. Let's do Fields. Maybe that happens on draft day.
I was going to say that's a good point because I feel like that is kind of a draft day thing where it's like after the first round plays out and the quarterbacks have kind of settled at that point. That's probably when you see them pull the trigger.
Well, they probably don't want Caleb coming in and answering the questions all summer with him and Fields and who's the quarterback and all that kind of stuff. And we already know that Caleb and his dad can be a bit dramatic about stuff. So I think you need to just avoid that. And we know from random sources as well that the whole locker room still prefers Justin, and of course they do. Justin's been their guy for the last handful of years. So if you still have Justin Fields there, the guys that have been playing with them, the DJ Moores and everybody else there, they're going to root for Justin because he's been the guy in the locker with them, not Caleb Williams.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, exactly. You can't go into the season with both of them on their roster. I think I would be shocked if he's still there after draft day. I would be like after even like I wouldn't be shocked if that's something that gets done before the end of the first round, just so that like it kind of settles and people start asking Caleb Williams all these kind of questions that it's not one that he has to answer. To your point.
Remember too. So a team again like Vegas that has been linked to him probably the most heavily. The Raiders can't really do a trade for him until after June 1st right now, because the Jimmy G and the Hunter Renfrow contracts don't come off the books until that post-June 1st cut, and that's the problem with a few of these teams. So I mean, but I don't know how I don't know if you, Caleb. These June 1st salary restrictions and cuts and whether people can sign or not is confusing the living hell out of me, because I was told Russell Wilson can't officially sign until after June 1st, and then here we go today. He's officially a steal. I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, I think they'd still be able to make it happen. I think the big thing, again, I'm with you. I don't really know the intricate details of it. Another example in terms that you bring up in terms of the Jimmy G thing. I mean, he has already signed with the Rams as of today.
Yeah, but he's technically not cut until June 1st. That's
the thing. I don't think they're. Again, I don't know the rules. My kind of understanding of it is that it's not that strict. I think the biggest thing is that they're like cap compliant by the new league year, which has already happened.
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
So I think they would be fine to make that move. Yeah. And honestly, like, GMs are smart and the cap isn't real. Like, they'll find a way.
Yeah, look at the Saints.
Yeah, exactly. If we want to just kind of end off this Bears discussion, talk about Caleb Williams likely coming in, is going to have one extra target. Yesterday, the trade was made for Keenan Allen for a 4th-round pick.
What? The Brian Burns trade was not ideal. This is the worst trade.
Oh, sure. And I know a few Chargers fans as well that are just devastated. Like,
you know Chargers fans?
I do. I know. It's crazy. Wow. And the funny thing, not only do I know one, I know two, and neither of them are happy about it. I mean, why would you? Yeah, exactly.
This has been your guy. You had a 4th for Keenan Allen?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they were talking about cutting him, so at least you got something.
Yeah. It was the kind of thing I thought would be avoided after they cut Mike Williams. I think I underestimated just how bad their cap situation was, because it was like, you're going to have to do something where they restructured Joey Bosa and then they cut Mike Williams, and you think that's going to be the end of it. And then this move happens. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, who's Justin Herbert going to throw to at this point?
Quentin Johnson. And they're probably going to draft. Yeah. I mean, there's a very scary scenario in the draft where the Vikings can trade up and take that Cardinals pick. And then they go take J.J. McCarthy there. Let's say if the Pats don't want to move. And all of a sudden, Marvin Harrison falls to the Chargers. And holy crap, Marvin Harrison's dynasty stock is just through the roof.
Yeah.
If not, Neighbors is there, Oden's is there. They have it's a pretty stocked receiving draft, so you're going to be okay with the wideout side. There's some interesting wideout projects you can go with. You can go with the Odell Beckhams. You can go with the Michael Thomases. I mean, you can try to do the Higgins trade, but with everything that's going on with the cap, you're probably going to have to trade Bosa or Khalil Mack to make that work, though.
Yeah, and I think with the moves they've made, I think they're making it pretty clear that that's not the direction they're going to go in. That they're going to try to keep Bosa and try to keep Mack and get rid of a guy like Keenan Allen. I mean, it's really rough because I believe Keenan Allen has been a Charger his whole career, right? And he's been there for forever. So it is kind of an unceremonious way to go out, which really sucks. But it's one of those things, just like the Brian Burns trade, where it's great on the other end of it, to take advantage of this kind of a situation, because now if you're the Bears, you've created such a great situation for Caleb Williams to walk into, which is one of normally the biggest things that's an issue about drafting a quarterback first overall. And I think it's something that you mentioned Caleb Williams and his dad. I think before they were talking about like, oh, if the team's not right, like we'll go back to college. Like, and that was a conversation before he had to declare. But that I don't think that's going to be the case here, because they've got you got DJ Moore, you've got as much as I don't love it, you've got a decent running back in your backfield, and now you've got Keenan Allen too. Like these guys got
Gerald Everett and Cole Kmet, so decent 2 tight end set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I still absolutely have the chance to be a good offense.
Doubt, but
I do too. I mean, you had to deal with him, so
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the Bears I think for the first time in a while, the Bears have like a legit offense, and maybe finally have a quarterback for the first time, really since Jim McMahon, probably the best quarterback in the history of the Bears. So all respects to Justin Fields right now, or Rex, unless you're a big Rex Grossman fan.
Yeah. It's gonna be an exciting, interesting team to watch.
Yeah.
We're
doing
speaking of,
I guess just go ahead. Sorry.
Speaking of exciting and interesting teams to watch as of now, the Falcons have been firing off free agency moves. So we'll just kind of talk about them as a whole. We got Kirk Cousins is the big one, but they also brought in Darnell Mooney, signing him in free agency, and then flipped Desmond Ridder to the Cardinals for Rondale Moore, which I think is a sneaky good deal. What do you guys think about the Falcons?
Simon, I'll let you go.
Sure. Well, we talked about it last week as well. I know, Caleb, you wanted the Falcons specifically to go after Justin Fields, because I remember you thinking that was a really good move, and I think by the end of it, I partially agreed with you. But I really don't hate it. I think Kirk Cousins is gonna have the opportunity to use all of these weapons really, really well. I think this Falcons team absolutely has the chance to be, sneakily good. They have such an insane offense. You mentioned it as well. Their defense, not that bad. Not that bad. They definitely have the potential to surprise a lot of teams, maybe take that division. I'm excited to watch them. I'm sure I'll tune into a couple Falcons games this year. I know I'm a little higher on Kirk Cousins than a lot of people are, so that also could be part of it, but I like what they've done. I don't really know what they could have done better other than maybe go after Fields, but at that point, no one's going after Fields, so that just feels like a nitpick.
Well, he got the Netflix bump, right, Kirk?
Yeah.
I feel like the Netflix doc kind of changed everyone's opinion on Kirk Cousins because they loved him so much from the Netflix doc.
Very likable dude.
He's very likable. I think everything they've done offensively has been great. Defensively, they're still waiting for Calais Campbell and that decision. They left Jeff Aduka to the Texans, who I know we're going to talk about the AFC, and I think the Texans won free agency. They've killed it. But overall, offensively, they've done great. Say what you want to say about Kirk Cousins. He is a steady, safe quarterback.
Yeah.
And, if you're a fantasy player, okay, this is the year. You're talking yourselves into this is Kyle Pitts' year. This is Kyle Pitts' year. It's finally going to happen. But, they have an opportunity now to see what happens with Kyle Pitts and see if he's worth paying. Drake London, see if he's worth paying. Bijan, you talked about backs like Saquon, Caleb, not just being a running back. And Bijan, we know, is so much more than that. And I think he saw Gibbs in Detroit kind of passed him in the rookie running back conversation last year quite a bit, and Jahmyr Gibbs. And Bijan has that potential to be a catcher and to be a runner and to be a CMC level running back. And now that he has a guy in Kirk, he has that opportunity. Got a good coach there with Raheem Morris. So I think everything there is right. And you look at the division, that arguably is the worst division in football right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
You just don't get, I can look at every single division like, oh, okay. I would say the second might be the AFC West is pretty bad right now. That's probably the second worst division maybe now all of a sudden. But we're not having conversations about Carolina. The Bucks are, good, but they've lost some defensive pieces like Murphy Bunting and lost Devin White.
They're definitely not better than they were last year.
No, and then the Saints are the Saints, and it depends how much you care about Derek Carr and what he can do. And the Falcons, I thought, were the best team in that division last year. It's just Arthur Smith's not a good coach, Desmond Ridder's not a good quarterback, and they shit the bed in games they should have won.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think you talk about the Texans winning free agency. I would almost argue that the Falcons have won free agency, or they're up there. Kirk Cousins is the big piece, and solving their quarterback problems. You even had, the quarterback problems were bad when their new coach is coming in and saying, "Oh yeah, I wouldn't have this job if we had a better quarterback." That's when you know it's bad. So getting a guy like Kirk, who again we talked about on the previous podcast, I was more of a Justin Fields guy in this spot, but I think that's just because I'm higher on Fields than a lot of people are, and I thought they would kind of go with a more try to develop a little bit more, try to wait it out, and maybe wait one more year until you fully go for it, try to develop Fields. They're going for it now. And I think that's what these moves indicate, where you bring in Kirk, who is a very much win now guy because he's 36 and coming off an injury. And then you make a whole bunch of moves to bring even more weapons around him. The weapons would have been good anyways, even if you didn't add Darnell Mooney and Rondale Moore. But now you've got an excellent, one of the best receiver trios in the league, I think, at this point. plus Kyle Pitts plus Bijan. That is an insane offense, and I think it can take them pretty far. I wasn't completely sold on the Falcons' offense with just adding Kirk Cousins. I think the Mooney and Rondale Moore deals honestly put it over the top for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, anyone else in that division just there's nothing else to move me. Like, there's no reason to even talk about anyone else in that division. They haven't done anything. I mean, for Carr, it's gonna. I dealt with this as a Raider fan. Like, he just continually learns a new offensive playbook, and he's going to be learning another new one this year. So it's always a step back when he has to learn a new playbook. So it's a step back there for the Saints, who I guess you would say, even with all respect to the Bucs winning the division last year, you probably still say the Saints are the second best team in that division. But it comes down to the play of what Derek Carr is, and I don't even know they don't even have a backup right now because Winston went to the Browns. So it's the Saints have all the talent in the world, just like the Falcons do. It's just, can they rely on Derek Carr to be what they need him to be?
Yeah, and he probably won't. And I mean, even then, the Saints, they're also stripping parts away faster just because of the way they are in the cap. I feel like they're always going to be about a 9-8, 8-9 team. I don't think much moves the needle on that, honestly, just because of how they're kind of stuck in neutral at this point. But if we want to move on to I didn't really design it this way, but we have kind of been talking all NFC. If we want to flip over the card, talk about some AFC stuff.
Well, no. We got to talk about your division.
We got to talk about. We can. Oh yeah. Should we wrap up the NFC? We can talk about.
You got my guy.
We should have been crossing some of these off here.
My man Sam Howell is now in Seattle. I called this on our podcast.
You called this. That was one of the first things I thought when I saw the move. You called it, and I was kind of. It was one of those things when you brought it up that I didn't. I honestly hadn't considered. I think about the one thing with this. If I'm to give my opinion on the Sam Howell trade now, I think that I don't love them giving up. I know it's just a pick swap, and we downgrade from a third to a fourth, so it's not like we're giving up a third-round pick. But I still don't like a pick as high as a third being thrown around in there. I don't know. It seems like a little bit more than I would have liked to give up, even if it is just moving down around. Our draft capital is looking kind of rough, especially because we don't have our second rounder from the Leonard Williams trade. Yeah. I really like that John Schneider came out and immediately was like, no, Gino's still the starter. Like, we are trading for him to be our backup. I'm very glad that they did that right out of the bat. And that we didn't have, I mean, we're still going to have these storylines anyways, but hopefully we have less stupid off-season storylines. It's like, oh, Sam Howell's coming for Gino's job. I don't know. Like,
he's coming.
Trust that at all.
He's coming. So here's the thing: that everyone listens to the 7K pod knows I'm entirely biased towards Sam Howell because he's a former Tar Heel. So I'm gonna put that out of the way. But look what Sam did last year. This is the guy through 60% of the year was leading the league in yards passed, and was up there in touchdowns, and had no offensive line, no real help. And now he gets to go to a team with three major weapons, an O-line that still needs help, but has a really good running back core back there, much better coaching that he has. So I think, it is Gino's job. Make no mistake about it. This is Gino's job, but you could do worse than Sam Howell as your backup. I mean, all respect to Drew Lock and the game he had against Philly. I think that's a game the Seahawks fans will always treasure. That Drew had that game, and best of luck to him with the G-men. But Sam Howell is your backup. You could do a lot worse.
Yeah. And I do think it's a smart move in that regard, just because of, especially after what we saw last season, with as many backups that got playing time. Like, I completely agree with that. Like, if we're just looking at this move purely from like you got probably one of like top. I don't. Is it too much of a stretch to say like top 5 backup quarterbacks? If like
I don't think
up
so.
there
Sam,
even
if
more.
you looked at all the quarterbacks in the league, Sam is a top 35 quarterback.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think again, and it also is the kind of thing. I know we're like, Simon, you were kind of mentioning this before we hopped on here, but it's very much because the conversation was whether the Seahawks are going to draft a rookie or not. I still think it's a possibility, but he's definitely someone you can develop too.
I mean, if they end
He
up
is.
drafting a rookie, do you run with 3 quarterbacks at that point? That's more my question as to what
Well,
Seattle's
I
planning
saw
to do.
Penix for them for a lot of drafts before they went with Howell, and now I don't know. Like, I don't think you're looking at a Penix or a Bo Nix. You're maybe looking more now at the Spencer Rattlers,
Yeah.
the Jordan Travises, and I think a team will take a Jordan Travis, but they probably will put him on the injury report. Like for those that aren't familiar with Jordan Travis, he was the FSU quarterback this year, and their bowl hopes kind of got dashed, unfortunately, because Jordan Travis's injury, and the collection committee were a bunch of cowards and didn't want to have FSU play because Jordan Travis wasn't the starting quarterback for them anymore. Really good quarterback, but very serious injury. So a team like Seattle, if I were them, why not take Jordan Travis down the road and be like, you're not. You
How
can
far
just
do you think
chill.
he's going to fall down the draft class?
It depends on the medicals. I mean, I think this is going to be the same thing with Penix, right? Like the medicals are going to probably sink both these guys. I think Penix is the fourth best, third or fourth best quarterback in this draft. But because of the medicals for Penix, he's going to fall down because of those knees. And for Jordan Travis too, I think he could have been even ahead of JJ McCarthy beforehand. But now those medicals are really going to hurt him. He could fall as far as the 5th or 6th round.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And you got to think Seattle would be more than okay with doing something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of picks to spend on backup quarterbacks if you group it together with the Sam Howell move, but I don't know. If I was Seattle, I definitely would be scared.
You just put him on IR and just let him take the season. I mean, not enough teams do that. I mean, I'm sure you guys talked about this for the NHL trade, like what the Vegas Knights do for their injury side of things, right? I mean, we've seen it more in the NBA more recently, right? Like you look at what Chet Holmgren did last year, right? Chet probably could have came back and been part of the push for the Thunder to make the playoffs, but like, why would we bother? So I would do the same with the Jordan Travis this year. And if you're Seattle, you're weighing your quarterback options right now. Gino, is this the last year of his contract, Caleb, or is it another year?
I believe
I think
this is the last year, and even if it's not, it's one of those things where they can get out of it very easily.
Right. So, he'll have Howell breathing down his neck, and if not, if you decide to draft somebody else, then you at least put that pressure onto Gino. I mean, you look at that Seahawks set, shouts to Tyler Lockett, man. Like, put that guy up in the rafters, like restructuring his contract. Every Seahawks fan I know, loves that guy, and there's a reson why. Like, restructuring that contract, man. They're fantastic, and the running back core that you get to have there is great. I love everything that Seattle has this year. I just thought the defense was a little up and down, and I thought there was 2 games I watched that Gino I thought lost for them last year when they could have won, but he was injured last year. So you get a healthy Gino, and now they have a quarterback that like I said, for a good part of the year was leading the league in yards, and if they need to make the moves, they know they have a guy that can possibly, have big games. I think the biggest set of games you remember for Sam Howell were those games that the Commanders had against the Eagles, and he looked unbelievable in those games.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I know that John Schneider even mentioned talk about the Eagles games for Sam Howell, but also the game he had against the Seahawks was another good one. I was there in person in Seattle watching that game, and the Commanders kept it close with us, and he had a pretty fantastic game. And they played well above my expectations and almost sent me home crying. But it was obviously the big. If we want to wrap up the Sam Howell stuff, it is very much a boom or bust kind of thing too. I think that's another important thing to mention, because yes, he led the league in passing yards for a lot of the time. He led the league in touchdowns, or not led the league, but had like 21 touchdowns or whatever it was. But he also had like 21 picks.
He went 21 and 21, so he's got to clean that up. He did have some very sloppy picks.
Yeah, and that's the fear.
So he's got to clean that up.
But that's something that can hopefully be coached out. That's, I think, what the Seahawks are probably betting on.
But I mean, in your division, before we move to the AFC, there's not a lot really to talk about. Like the Niners didn't make anything explosive. I've liked everything the Cardinals have done, but it's nothing like mind blowing. They got Desmond Ritter as a backup. They got Murphy Bunting. They got Bilal Nichols. Smart, clever moves. And then I guess the big one is now, Caleb, it's okay. The bad man is gone. The bad man is gone. He can't hurt you anymore. He can't hurt you anymore.
It's so nice.
Aaron Donald.
That was one of the since the Seahawks have done kind of nothing all the free agency, I think that's the best notification I've had crawl across my phone screen. Yeah, no, I mean, it's the kind of thing where I obviously, especially in like the prime Russ years, I feel like that was when he was most a thorn in our side, especially because he was in his prime. That's when he was racking up like 20 sacks or whatever it was. It's crazy to see Aaron Donald go this early into his career. Only been there for 10 years.
Yeah.
It felt like it wasn't
32.
surprising though, honestly, because we've been
He
talking
talked
about it forever.
after the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, he talked about it
Yeah.
after the Super Bowl. I'm surprised McVay stayed now all that time. McVay's got to go coach Jimmy G.
Yeah. I mean, the Rams still have a good team around them. I mean, they've got good young
offense. They got a first-round pick this year.
Yeah, for the first time in forever. They were able to retool through the draft so well last year. Like it's so very scary as a Seahawks fan.
So good. They drafted very, very good. I do think, like I said, I do think the Rams and Seahawks will switch places this year. In the NFC, like we talked about before we moved to the AFC here, like I don't see the NFC changing too much. I see Bucks and Falcons switching and Rams and Seahawks switching. And I mean, I don't really see much different really in where everything goes. Maybe a Dallas falls out. I mean, we didn't really talk too much about the Cowboys because there's nothing to really talk about. There was this bizarre Stefan Diggs rumor that I think was just the internet trying to do something because there was nothing super exciting happening this afternoon. It's like, hey, maybe Stefan Diggs get traded for Michael Gallup. But yeah. So Aaron Donald's Hall of Fame, no doubt. Anyways, let's move to the AFC.
Yeah. AFC doesn't have quite as much, honestly. We'll start with what I think is the biggest signing in the AFC, and that is Derrick Henry going to the Ravens. I think that's a really exciting one. That's scary for anybody in Baltimore.
That's scary. I mean, they did lose Patrick Queen to the Steelers.
Yes.
But that we talked about, option with Barkley and Jalen Hurts. How's about option with Team
That's
Henry
gonna be
and
so fun to watch.
Lamar? Holy crap!
Oh,
yeah.
It's gonna be such a pain in the ass anytime you play them. Because I mean, people don't talk about it as much, but Derrick Henry is still stupid quick. Like,
you look at all his stats last year. I was looking at his stats and StatMuse. I didn't realize how good he still was last year.
Oh, absolutely. He's still an insane running back. And I think in that backfield, it's going to be... I mean, what do you even do on an option? Like, I don't got an answer for that. Like, it's just... That offense is going to be so fun to watch this year. And I mean, if you thought the Ravens were good this year, I mean, sure, they lost Queen. That's gonna hurt them a lot. But, I mean, offensively, they've pretty much just gotten better.
Yeah, offensively they got better. Defensively they've lost some pieces and they lost Mike McDonald to Seattle.
Yeah,
so
true.
Defensively I have a few questions for them, but they just draft so well. So I'm just gonna let them just figure out the draft and see what they do because again they just draft so darn well.
Oh yeah, and it's the kind of thing with talking about the option, running that with Derrick Henry and Lamar. I think one of the more underrated aspects of this kind of backfield is the fact that they'd have a guy called Keaton Mitchell back there too, and he was super impressive, and he is such a great complement to Derrick Henry because whereas Derrick Henry you've got obviously known for being big back that can like take down anybody. You think of the stiff arm in the playoffs against the Ravens, you think of all that kind of stuff, and then Keaton Mitchell is the perfect complement to that in providing speed, quickness. It's such an amazing changeup. And then add what Lamar can do on the ground on top of that. I don't know, like that's something that's super exciting to me if I'm a Ravens fan. It's just looking at not just Lamar and Derrick Henry in terms of what they can do together, but also what you saw from Keaton Mitchell last year. Like that's just like by far and away the best rushing attack in the league. If they already weren't that, honestly, now it's just to another level.
And their division didn't get better. The Bengals got worse right now.
Yeah.
The Bengals, defensively, not that much better. Offensively, it's a mess. The Browns are the Browns. We'll see how the piece of shit is at quarterback next year. And, I did like them getting Jerry Jeudy. That was a nice move by them.
Yeah.
And Winston's the backup there. Hopefully he's the starter. And, the Steelers got Russ, so we'll see how Russ cooks.
Yeah.
I mean, $1.2 million for Russ, sure.
That is one of my favorite moves.
Steelers country, let's weld.
It's black and gold, let's go, apparently.
That's not too bad. Maybe it's my biased Seahawks fan talking in me that remembers the glory days. But if you can get Russell Wilson for literally the veteran minimum, I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good move.
He's going to be significantly better than
Kenny
Pickett.
I think it's a good move. You look at his stats last year; they're not as bad as what everyone thinks there are. And there always is a narrative that we start collecting towards about a player, and then it gets dissipated. And here's a narrative that's 100% true. Sean Payton's an asshole, and he didn't want Russ to be the quarterback last year. Never really gave him a fair shot. Always wanted his own guy in there. But you look at Russ. Yeah, Russ lost him some games last year, no doubt. But going in that system now with Tomlin, the weapons that he's going to be able to have, and I know they traded Johnson to the Panthers, but he's got George Pickens. The Steelers are going to draft whoever at wide receiver, and he's going to be the next great receiver because that's what Pittsburgh does. He's got a decent run game there, an amazing defense. And I think that's the one really good thing from, like you kind of mentioned, Caleb, with those old Legion of Boom teams, he gets to kind of do this with the Steelers now. Let Hayward and Watt do what they do in the rest of that Steelers defense, and you just do you. Not too much pressure in, just don't blow a game for us. And I thought they could have beat, was it Buffalo they faced in the playoff game?
Yeah.
They had no Watt in that game, and I thought they were really close to beating Buffalo in that game. They just needed slightly better quarterback play. That's what Russ gives you.
And I think the thing with Russ is you don't have that big contract sitting over you anymore. You're only getting paid $1 million from the team that's you're playing for. And I mean, you're obviously making a lot more, but I mean, with Russ on that team, like you mentioned, Josh, I mean, sky's the limits. I mean, we don't know what we're going to see out of him. If we're going to see him return back to even just a fraction of what we saw in Seattle, or if we're going to see the same quarterback from last year, either way, I think it's an upgrade. I think the Russ we saw last year is still levels above Kenny Pickett. So, honestly, if I'm a Steelers fan, I'm not worried. I think you've just gotten better. Like, even if you don't see the same Russ that we've seen in the past, I mean.
And they just added Patrick Queen to that defense with Howard and Fitz. And it's and JJ and TJ Watt, that's a scary defense.
Oh yeah, and I mean it always has been a scary defense. The offense was always their issue. I think my one worry would be because I know Russ's stats last year, like you said, Josh, like they are a lot better than people think. Yeah. I do think a lot of that, the issue with that is a lot of that was inflated by the fact that it was garbage time and also lots of short stuff, lots of yards after catch. There's like I don't remember what the stat was exactly, but some sort of crazy stat about what percentage of his throws were 5 yards or less. That is not the Russ I knew in Seattle. You kind of get scared in terms of Arthur Smith being the offensive coordinator. A lot of what he does is stuff over the middle, and that's not something that Russ is very good at. It was never something he was good at. He wasn't good at it in Seattle. He wasn't good at it in Denver. That might be something you have to change. And Arthur Smith is not necessarily known as a person who is good at adapting and changing what he thinks when he probably should. Cough everything in Atlanta and learning how to use the talent that he has. That worries me a little bit. But honestly, like Simon, you made a great point. I think the pressure in Denver was a huge thing. Not only just the contract, but what you brought up too, Josh, in terms of when your coach hates you, like that isn't great either. The pressure of the trade and everything, basically forcing his way out of Seattle. He doesn't have all of that now. Like the expectations are low at this point.
There is one expectation though, because his Hall of Fame bubble has burst. This guy's not a lock for the Hall of Fame anymore. He needs 1-2 more good seasons to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. That is the kind of that's I think an interesting conversation. As a Seahawks fan, I think he gets. I hope he gets in anyways,
It's
even if
close.
he doesn't have those
It's
one or two good
close.
seasons.
It is close.
Because it is close, and I think people really undervalue just how good he was from about 2016 to 2019. I always,
quarterback.
yeah, I always think that that if Lamar didn't have that insane season where he was the unanimous MVP, like Russ would have an MVP because he was so good that season. He just happened to be a quarterback at the same time as Lamar Jackson in that year. I do think he should be there, but I do understand that I have bias having watched him every Sunday for 10 years. So you're probably right in that he does need those extra seasons, but at least it's not something that is as continuously pointed out and is continuously on your mind as the other stuff would have been in Denver, because that was just a pressure cooker waiting to pop.
Yeah, the bring up that Lamar, I was in Seattle for the Monday Night Football game that year when they faced the Vikings, and everyone was just like, because Lamar had that really good game that Sunday, and we were in the bar and people were like, fuck, Russ has to have a good game tomorrow against the Vikings. Like, I think Lamar just got MVP from that game, and Russ had an okay game, but the chatter coming out, they had this great comeback on Monday Night Football against the Vikings to win the game and everything like that. Everyone's like, that was great, but I think Russ lost MVP.
Yeah. Yep. I remember that season really well, because especially with how, because you're right, he kind of lost it on the stretch, but with how he was playing in that first half of the season, I really thought he had it. If we want to kind of transition away from the AFC North, we'll go to the AFC West, and I'll just tee this one up for you, Josh, with your Raiders.
You want to talk about defense?
Well,
you want to talk about defense? You want to talk about defense? Mahomes, bring it! Good luck dealing with Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby now, AFC quarterbacks. Have fun. And I think, the one thing I love that both these guys say they're going to try to bring Tyree Wilson along because he had an up and down rookie year at the ankle. Michael Coombs, who no one talks about, is fantastic. Panda Jack, who we got from the Patriots, who is an absolute stud back there in the secondary. He likes to eat. You can see the Antonio Piercing's infection to Wilkins right there. That defense, oh, baby. Yeah, look at him giving the Hadouken right there. It's, man, it's exciting. And this guy is made for a Raider. This is like, going back to the old Raiders, like Jack Tatum, Ted Hendricks level type of Raider. And Max Crosby has instilled that in there, and Antonio Pierce has instilled that in. This is the most excited I've been about a Raider defense probably since 2002, when we had Chuck Wood and we had Bill Romanowski and Darren Woodson and a lot of key pieces on that defense that took us to the Super Bowl that year. Offensively, good. Quarterback is it's something. Gardner Minshew, little ass boy, as Max Crosby called him. I like Gardner. I think he's a solid quarterback, and AOC was good last year, but this is where the Justin Fields conversation does come back up. Of the Raiders are a quarterback away from being a team that you're dealing with as a playoff contender. They're not a Super Bowl contender, but as a decent playoff contender. And I'd say even right now with the Wilkins move, they'll push for a wild card right now. If you look at that, I mean, they're the second best team in the division right now, I would say. I don't think that's much of a competition the way things are going right now. But that Wilkins move, man, that went down nice. Losing Josh sucks, but Zamir was so good down the stretch that you can afford to lose to Josh Jacobs when Zamir White was as good as he was. And I don't know about you, Caleb, I don't know if I ever believe in paying a running back. Not that much, not $12 million, as much as I love Josh Jacobs and spent $300 on his jersey. I'm in a good place right now with Vegas. The quarterback situation needs to be shored up, but Wilkins and Max, good luck.
Yeah. I think, to the point of paying running backs, I think I'm of the opinion that you pay them if they are a true difference maker type, like a Saquon Barkley or a CMC, but there are very few of those guys, and I don't think Josh Jacobs is that. So I think reinvesting that on the defense and probably using some of that extra cap space you get to get a guy like a Christian Wilkins, I think is a much better move. And I think this defense is super exciting. I think with all the moves that they've done. They're showing that they don't want to rebuild and that they want to come out and compete for a playoff spot right away. We'll see how that goes in the end, but obviously it's super exciting for now. Quarterback is the one thing they have to shore up. The Gardner Minshew contract, I thought, was a lot of money. That was kind of concerning.
How much are they
It's
paying?
not as bad
Field.
as you think with incentives and everything. It's not as bad. It's only like
Okay,
6
okay.
guaranteed or something like that. It's not that bad.
Oh, okay. No, that's not
Yeah.
terrible.
No. It's 12.
Okay.
It's 6 and then plus guarantees. I think that's the thing when the people see the 12.
Yeah.
That's how much Jacobs got, but it's like 6 or 8 million, and then it's like plus like if you get the Pro Bowl, if you get a starter for this many times, and all this kind of stuff in between it.
All right.
Yeah.
Which, as
Yeah,
much
that-
as I
that
would
makes
love
it a
to see
little bit
Gardner Minshew in a Pro Bowl, I don't know what the odds of that are. And I mean, even if he does make it that far,
he just was. He
was
just
he?
was.
Oh,
He
never mind. I'm
yeah,
dumb.
yeah.
No, that shows you how much I know about the Colts.
Yeah.
We can kind of shift to your rival if we want to keep it in the AFC West.
Sorry, just as we're doing this right now, we have the ACC tournament going on right now,
Yeah.
and North Carolina State just hit a buzzer beater to tie the game up.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Mark
Who
Madness
are they?
is hitting.
I saw they beat Duke. Hey, yeah.
They did beat Duke.
Who they're playing now.
Virginia. So this is the face North Carolina right now.
Ooh.
Yeah. Anyways,
I gotta get myself more into college basketball, man. It's not the one sport I've never. I get into March Madness if there's a Cinderella team, but past that, I'm like.
We got the women this year. That's all you need to know. We got Caitlin Clark and everybody there. But it's in the AFC West really quick because we don't need to talk about the Donkos at all because they're nothing.
No.
But Hollywood Brown went to the Chiefs, and it just got me really bummed out for like the last 24 hours.
That's a really good pickup for them, I think.
Man,
because
he
the one
got a
thing
decent receiver.
I was about to say, the one thing that Patrick Mahomes has been missing, other than, I mean, sure you've got Kelsey, but past that wide receiver room is. I mean, they were able to win with it, but it's pretty depressing. I think Hollywood Brown instantly just turns that around for them. That is such a good move for him. With
Rice, the way that Rice was playing last year,
that too, yeah.
Like, man, and they got a decent tight end too. I can't remember who they got for tight end.
Irv Smith.
Irv Smith, yeah. So I was like,
yeah.
God damn, Chiefs continuing
rough.
to be good at football.
and they re-signed Jones, and then they got to figure out Snead. If they get Snead back, then my goodness.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna get Snead back.
I hope not.
Well,
helps you breathe any
like
easier,
you said, the cap doesn't exist, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's already requested a trade, and it's like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that's gonna happen. I think I just don't think they'd be able to make it all work. For a positive for the Chiefs, though, like I don't think they're done adding at receiver because I think that Marquise Brown is just the start of it.
I could even get Mike Williams.
I was thinking that. I don't know if they have the cap space to make that work necessarily, but what I would be scared of is adding someone in the draft. And if one of those second tier receivers kind of falls their way, I'm thinking like an A.D. Mitchell from Texas, like, ooh, man.
Yeah.
That would be rough. That would be rough to deal with.
I think Brian Thomas fall to them somehow. I was like, no.
Ooh, yeah.
Or Franklin or Keenan Coleman.
Yep. It's a deep receiver class because you've got the top three, but then you've kind of got this next second tier that they're probably going to have their choice of guy, like at least a few guys left from that tier where that rounds out really well. That's really the only move the Chiefs had to make this offseason, honestly, is just signing one, like, kind of 1A or like a 2A, 1B type receiver like Hollywood Brown. And
Give
then
me that
you can kind of build
Thursday
from
game.
there.
Give me that Thursday game when they open up. I want Raiders and Chiefs. I want Raiders Chiefs Thursday night. Let's go. Let's go. We beat them on Christmas Day. It's the highest rated regular season NFL game. Give me Thursday in Kansas City. Let's do this.
Oh, yeah. If we want to move into, why don't we talk about the team that you thought won free agency, Josh? We'll talk about the Texans. You got Danielle Hunter is the headliner. We want to talk about that one.
Yeah, you want to talk about, as much as I'm happy for Wilkins and Max, you want to talk about him and Will Anderson together, and then they
Yeah, that's
added
gonna
Jeff
be nuts.
Okuya in the back there with Singleton, Will in the back there, and then they added Mixon.
Yeah.
Like, this is a nice team that they got going at Houston. Dare I say, like, I probably would put Baltimore second behind KC. This is the third best team in the AFC to me right now. This team
Yeah.
is just top to bottom, just a scary football team. Like, you want to talk about one of the quickest rebuilds. Like, as someone that's
Oh
been a
yeah.
Raider fan and has only seen the playoffs 2 times in 20 years, I'm like, why can't we do this? It's this
Yeah.
simple. All you got to do is draft a CJ Stroud, get a great coach like D'Amico Ryans, and get a generational talent like Will Anderson, and then
Yeah,
build a
super
free
easy.
agency. It's
Super
not that
easy.
hard.
Walk in the park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No,
they
they're
look great.
it's actually crazy because I mean they were fantastic last year. I mean, making it to the divisional round with a rookie quarterback and with a lot of young pieces, all in a first-year head coach, that is insane enough as it is. And then to add on top of that, I love the Joe Mixon thing. That especially jumps out to me as a great piece because I know I was hoping for Saquon to go there. That was kind of my pet project, Saquon landing spot. But if you're gonna have a consolation prize, having it be Joe Mixon for a 7th round pick, I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that yeah, like we said, Daniil Hunter across from Will Anderson, I think that'll be great, especially in terms of like taking a little bit of the pressure off him to produce to like a Pro Bowl level right away. Like having someone opposite him, I think will be really good for him. Um, yeah, it's just all around. Having them be third in the AFC, I don't think that's too far fetched.
No,
I
like
don't
this
have
team a
too much
lot.
else to add on it because it's just like they had the cap space and they went for it. Which I think when you're trying to maximize CJ Stroud's rookie deal, that's something you have to do, right?
Yeah, it's what the Hawks did with the Legion of Boom and Russ, right? And you got to 2
Yeah,
Super Bowls out of it. Probably should have too. Um, and I look at a team in that division too that kind of had a similar path, but the Jags spend money, but it's just like chaotic. It's very much a Tony Khan and the Khan thing. If you follow AEW, and just like, yeah, we'll get this and get this and get this because we have the money and we can do whatever we want. It's kind of like what AEW does. It's like, this doesn't all make sense, but screw it.
yeah, because they don't pay Calvin Ridley and then they pay Gabe Davis and they're kind of all over the place with all yeah. It doesn't because the Jags were kind of where the Texans were a couple of years ago when they're
They got
coming
to
off
pay
of that.
T-Law next year.
Yeah, where it looked like they were gonna, because they were obviously terrible with Urban Meyer, but then
Yeah.
they come back, they have that huge win against the Chargers in the
All the
playoffs, and
KC.
things are looking good, and then it's kind of you had them kind of fall off a cliff at the end of last year, missing the playoff. Like it's not looking good for them there, especially now that you've got the Texans coming in as the clear favorite to win that division again.
Yeah.
It's yeah. It does
Yeah,
seem like they're panic spending.
it does. That's such a weird division. It's so interesting. Like, the Titans are so weird. Like, I thought they'd bottom out, and they got like an interesting offense, bringing in Ridley and bringing in Pollard. The Colts didn't do a lot, but they got Ant coming back, and they just re-signed their guys, and they were right there. Like, that's a really interesting division. The Texans are at the top of it, but I don't know where everything else goes in that division.
Yeah, yeah, that's a weird one. I don't know if we want to move on to. I think the only division we haven't touched on is the AFC East, which I don't think there's a whole lot to touch on there, frankly.
Buffalo
They didn't.
got everybody. The Dolphins got Shaq Barrett, got Poyer. Like, they kind of fixed some things defensively a little bit.
The one I would like to highlight for the Dolphins is Jordan Brooks as a Seahawks fan.
Yeah, that hurt.
That is an absolute steal.
That's a steal. I like that move.
That is the worst thing the Seahawks did all off season was not bring him back because the Dolphins got him for incredibly cheap, and he is so much better than people think he is.
The worst thing you did too is release
year.
Quaylon Diggs. I still don't understand releasing Quaylon Diggs.
Yeah, I mean, he I understand it to an extent because one of the big issues that we had at the end of last year was tackling, and Quandre was never a good tackler. Like the Jamal Adams one was the obvious one, and you could have maybe kept Quandre, but I'm not like furious about it.
Who's in the secondary now? Is it just Kobe and Michael Jackson?
Well, because you got Tariq and Witherspoon out there on corners. You got Julian Love at safety. They also just signed a guy from the Jags, Rayshawn Jenkins, who I think I don't know if he's going to like start for us or anything, but I think he's a pretty average NFL player. I wouldn't be shocked if they continue to kind of address safety potentially through the draft. Jordan Brooks is the one, because safety was our big hole, but now we've created another gap by not bringing him back at linebacker. And I think the Dolphins, we may even trade linebackers. I know the Seahawks were looking at bringing in Jerome Baker, which I wouldn't mind, but I don't know why you don't just keep the homegrown guy. And the Dolphins are going to get a great player. Jordan Brooks has been fantastic for us.
Well, they didn't want to lose Wilkins, but they just the cap where everything goes, and they got to pay Tua soon here. That they didn't have a choice. They had to let him go. I wouldn't be shocked if the Dolphins draft a receiver, by the way, just because Tyreek was so up and down at the end with those injuries that I think they just want to be safe, just in case with those injuries, just to have a third guy. It may not necessarily be in the first, and we talked about it, Caleb, how deep this wide receiving class is. They will draft, I think, a receiver in the second or third round.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think it's obviously not their number one need, but it is kind of the thing where I do think, you talk about paying Tua, I do think that's maybe a little bit more of a question, and it's kind of a prove it year. But I do think if you want to give Tua the best chance to succeed, Tua's probably only as good as his weapons are. And so giving him another one, I think that'll help a lot, because I think it was sneakily underrated how little depth they had past Waddle and Hill, because once you reached that, and once one of them went down with injury, it was kind of falling off a cliff.
I guess the other thing, the Pats have done fine. Getting Jacoby, getting Gibson, they've done fine. I guess the elephant in the room is the Jets. And they did a really good job today getting Tyrone Smith. I think they've killed it fixing that O-line. But
Morgan Moses, I believe, as well.
Who's going to be behind center? That's the question all of a sudden now, because could Aaron Rodgers be with RFK in November?
Yeah. Oh, don't get me started.
That feels like a fever dream.
Like, and none of this is a sports pod; it's not a political pod, so we will stay away from any thoughts on that as much as possible. But it's, I did like the tweet of like Aaron Rodgers missing game election night.
Yeah. Oh my God! I don't need to go into any more of my Aaron Rodgers rant.
Yeah, I was about to say
this, if Aaron's going to do this for his attention grabbing, at least have the wherewithal to let the Jets know sooner rather than later. Because right now Tyrod Taylor's there and Zach's there, but this would be a team that would definitely trade for Justin Fields. So maybe let the Jets know if you're going to retire and be a vice president for RFK.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we're gonna give Caleb his Aaron Rodgers rant, this could go on for another hour. So I don't know if we want to.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to step in that zone.
Anybody who listens to the podcast knows that I think he's a jackass and stupid. But I think
you don't say.
Oh my God. I don't think it's gonna happen though. Like this reeks of like off-season bullshit headline.
He has the overwhelming odds too to be it. You know who number 2 is for the odds makers to be the vice president for RFK?
I don't even have a name to throw out with him, so no.
It's Jesse Ventura. That's where we are right now.
That's great.
Oh my God.
Yeah. At least Jesse Ventura, I guess, has some political stuff when he was the governor of Minnesota, but. Yeah, anyways, this is not a political podcast, so we'll move on.
Yeah, probably smart.
Yeah.
Well, what do we have left at this point?
I think that's pretty much it. We kind of...
Unless we want to hit on the Commanders.
We were good.
we kind of already
Yeah.
did.
Kid Neckler was a good get.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant.
Bobby Wagner.
Seemed happy about that one.
Yeah, I got Bobby Wags. I wanted him. I wanted Wags.
Nah. Watching him last year was a bit painful.
Yeah.
He's not quite who he used to be, and I was sad to see him go because of how much of an icon he is to the Seahawks, and I will continue to. He will be still one of my favorite players from Legion of Boom days. He couldn't cover anything anymore, and
He'll go to his jersey retired.
Oh yeah. Like this is me talking about him now does not impact what I think his legacy with the Seahawks is, or what I think of him as a player in his peak. He is not that anymore. He can't cover anything right now, and that was honestly one of the biggest problems with their defense. So I'm not shocked and not too sad that we didn't bring him back. But I don't know. Go Commanders. I'll be happy if he does well, but we'll see how that.
You pretty much
turns
traded
out.
him for Sam Howell.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
There you go. Overall, I think it's been a really fun free agency. But this draft is going to be just as exciting.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be a fun off season as a whole. I think there's going to be a lot of different moving pieces, even continuing into the second half of it. I mean, it's going to be a great time. Josh, thanks for joining us.
Always.
Yeah, always is fun. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And best of luck with everything going forward. And thanks for being part of FTN.
And we'll get into trade deadline stuff a little bit later. But before that, we're just going to take a look at kind of a broader picture. Look at the Canadian teams. Obviously, we're from Canada. Love talking about Canadian teams. There's this article, I believe in the Montreal Gazette by Pat Hickey, that asked the question, is this the year a Canadian team finally breaks the Cup curse? Now, obviously, that a Canadian team hasn't won the Cup in either of our lifetimes. Hasn't happened since 1993, so how many years is that by now? 30 something? 31?
Don't make me do math.
I think it's 31, 2024. We haven't won a cup. I haven't had a cup in Canada in 31 years. And there's, I'd say, about 4 teams that have a legitimate shot to do it this year. So we're going to go through all of them, say what we like about them, say what we don't like about them, and kind of rank them based on how likely we think they are to break the curse. So I don't know which one we want to start with, Simon, but
well, I say why don't we start with Winnipeg? We can start.
Right.
That's more the most random one, I think, out of all the options. So I guess we can start things off by just going, Caleb, what do you think about Winnipeg as a whole?
I think it's weird that they are doing as well as they are. Honestly, I think I think the we'll talk about the Canucks later, but I do kind of think the Jets are just like a smaller version of what's happening with the Canucks, where they were just kind of predicted to be either mediocre or not very good, and they've been like really good this season. I know the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade has paid off in spades for them. With a bunch of the pieces they've got from that, like giving them some great depth. And they've made some good trades and getting former Flames at the trade deadline, getting in Sean Monahan, Tyler Toffoli. Overall, like it's a pretty decent roster, especially with the moves they made at the deadline. I still have a little bit of trouble trusting them. I don't know. It does seem like it's a little bit fluky for them to be where they are. I don't know if you feel the same way.
No, I kind of get that. I actually think that comparison to Vancouver is very accurate because I think they are pretty much the same style of team where it's a very, very deep team. I think Vancouver has a bit more elite talent than Winnipeg does. But that's not to say that Winnipeg isn't just as deep of a hockey team. Like, I think if put in the right position, I think they can absolutely do a lot with what they have. I think they're absolutely not. A lot of teams in the in the Western side should fear this Winnipeg team because I think they can shock. I think they have that shock factor to them. They have really good goaltending, they have really good defense, and they have people who can score in spades. And I think that'll help them out a lot. I don't know if you want to jump right into where both of us have them on our rankings out of all the Canadian teams' likelihood of winning the Cup. But for me, I can tell you that I think that I have them third out of all the teams.
You have them third? Okay.
Yeah.
I have them fourth. I have them dead
Okay.
last.
That's pretty much about where I thought both of us would put them. Where they're either going 3 or 4. I think there's one team that they're a little bit more interchangeable with, but the top 2 are pretty much undisputed. And I think it's...
I think I have a controversial ranking probably, but...
Okay. Well, I think... I don't know. I like Winnipeg as a team. Maybe it's because they have a couple former Flames on their roster. Maybe it's because they're good. But I don't know. When I look at their roster, I think that they definitely have a chance to do a lot of shocking when the playoffs.
I think the Hellebuyck thing is the biggest thing. Like I think that makes up for a lot of your shortcomings in other places. Is having a guy like Hellebuyck and he's probably going to win the Vezina. Like he's playing at an insane level. I think that makes up for a lot of shortcomings in terms of
it makes
not
it
having
feel
a lot
crazy.
of top talent on your team.
Yeah, it makes it feel crazy that we were talking about Hellebuyck potentially leaving Winnipeg earlier this year.
Yeah. Yep. Him and Scheifele, hey?
Oh yeah.
They're both potentially out the door. And now, I mean, it's worked this season. I still question it like a little bit in terms of signing them for as long as they did, getting like 8-year extensions. But it's worked out really well for them this year. They've been able to kind of reload on the fly. Because I don't know, they didn't miss the playoffs last year, did they? They were still in.
Ooh.
But
if they
were in,
I don't
they
even
were a
remember.
first round exit.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever
If
they
they
did
did,
in the
they were
playoffs,
first
they
round
were
exit.
very clearly not memorable. And I think
Yeah.
I don't know. I like this Winnipeg team. I think they absolutely. When I say I rank them third, it's mainly because the top 2 teams, or even just like the amount of talent we have in Canada right now is absolutely insane. I think that. I mean, we saw the insane tear both Edmonton and Vancouver have gone on over the last like little bit, and Toronto's always just been insanely talented. So I think. I mean, it's so tough to rank a team like Winnipeg when they've kind of popped out of nowhere, even a bit more than Vancouver. Like, at least with Vancouver, it's felt like it's kind of been a long time coming with the amount of talent they have on their roster.
I don't know.
On.
I think Vancouver was more out of nowhere.
I think it was out of nowhere. I am not sitting here in front of you and telling you that I saw it coming. What I'm saying is that when you have Elias Pettersson and all of these Quinn Hughes, all of these insane players, you had to know that they'd have a good team at some point.
Yeah,
it's more that.
I mean, you could argue the other way. The Jets were still making the playoffs and kind of making a push for the playoffs before this. It's not where Vancouver was never really doing that.
That's
with
fair.
its core, at least, right?
Yeah.
That I think is something in their favor, is that a lot of the players on that team do have playoff experience.
That's true.
I think that's going to be a big thing because
that's
the Canadian
another reason
curse.
That this team could absolutely do something.
Yeah, the Canadian curse. I'll talk about this like more as we get onto the other teams too, but it's kind of just a smaller version of what's been happening with the Leafs since 1967, where it's just like the pressure gets to you, right? Especially in a 7-game series. And I think
you
being
realize
a Canadian
that it's
team had so much more pressure.
Oh, absolutely it does. Like, even, I mean, players even talk about, like, the difference in, like, fan bases you play in front of, right? Like, Canadian fans are fucking nuts. Like, because, I mean, we all love our hockey teams, and it's just, when your team loses in the playoffs, it's devastating. Like, especially, like, for me, I think back to when we lost against Edmonton, even though that was more of a slow burn, like, or the Ducks even, like, in that year, in like the comeback Flames year in 2014-2015, that was devastating to see that team lose in the second round, because it felt like they were destined to do so much that year despite really not having that much talent. Like, it's stuff like that it makes it such a hard market to play in, I think, for so many of these talented players, and makes absolutely in the playoffs it's amped up and makes it so much more difficult. And I think that absolutely is a factor as to why. I mean, at this point, it almost feels like it won't be broken. which is an incredibly odd thing to say. But it almost feels like
I don't think any of these teams actually are.
yeah. Like I hope one of them do. I hope Edmonton isn't the one, but I hope one of them do. I hope like but yeah, no, it's the type of thing where like I mean, even just breaking it down. Toronto, no. Winnipeg, I I like what you got, but no. Vancouver probably I like their odds the best because I think they're very well balanced, but no. And Edmonton, no. Like it's none of these teams. They're really good, but I don't think they're playoff teams. If that makes sense, they're regular season teams for the most part. I would actually argue that Winnipeg is built for the playoffs. This is the type of team that really would excel in a 7-game series because of the amount of depth
how deep they are.
How much depth they have. Hellebuck will never. He is the perfect goalie for a long playoff run, and I mean their defense is pretty underrated. So I'm not.
I think. Well, I don't think they're a good enough team to win the Stanley Cup, but I do see what you mean in terms of like them being built for the playoffs in the specific way that I think that what was my point here? That they're going to win. They'll win a couple rounds. They'll surprise some people. They'll go further than people think they will, but they won't win the cup. Like I think that's what they're built for. When you say they're built for the playoffs, that's kind of what I'm imagining in my head. Honestly, it's just like a couple rounds past where they should be, and I feel like they've done that before. But you can only get so far with just depth and not a lot of top end talent because it's Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, and that's about it. And they're not even like the most fantastic superstars. Your superstars.
I don't know. I think that's enough talent to win it with enough depth. Like I don't think their chances are impossible. I think they totally could do it. But
I mean, any team that gets a playoff spot can technically win. I just like think the odds are very stacked against them. It's like very. There's a reason I have it for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I look at this team, I think a good comparison is like. Although I will say I don't know if they quite have the defensive capabilities that these teams had, but I think like the Islanders teams that we saw for a couple of years in a row, where they went stupid far in the playoffs for like no reason, like nobody could explain what was making them so good. Like they had really really solid defense, and while I don't think this Winnipeg team quite has that same level of defense, I think a lot of what makes them good is their offensive depth and their goaltending. But I think it's a similar kind of thing where you can't really put a finger on exactly what makes them so good, but they have so much of everything that it just works. Like it's one of those things where it's almost like, I don't know. I like Winnipeg. I like Winnipeg a lot. I think they could absolutely be a conference team. Although the West is very, very deep this year, so they'll have a lot to deal with if they want to be. But I think they definitely have enough talent to surprise some of the better teams. But we can move on. Do you have a specific team you want to move on to here?
No. Where are you feeling?
Why don't we do Edmonton? We can stay in roughly the same area and go Edmonton.
Same division? Or no, not same division. Not quite yet. No.
Whatever.
I was thinking we were talking about Vancouver. Nope. Edmonton. So I think, honestly, I'm about to make you mad, Simon. I'll just spoil my ranking right off the top. I think they are the most likely to win the cup if anybody is going to. I think a couple things. Again, this is all with the caveat that I don't think any of them are going to win the cup. I don't think Edmonton's going to win the cup. I think that they always get propped up as a team that can win the cup and then always fall flat on their face. But I think a couple of things. I think number one, they have the highest top-end talent. I mean, that is something we've known for years. They have McDavid, they have Draisaitl. So with that, you can beat anybody. Their issue has always been their depth, and I think that's gotten a little bit better this year. I think that, honestly, the fact that they had such a terrible start to the season helps them, and that they were able to actually fight through adversity and get to a place where they're building a better team around them. I think that really helps them as a team that's normally kind of just coasted by, gotten into the playoffs, and then got swamped by someone they were supposed to beat. or fallen in the. I mean, I guess it was never someone they were supposed to beat because it's like, oh yeah, they always lose to the people who eventually win the Stanley Cup. But I do think it's good for them to have faced that adversity. I don't know. I think that I generally like this Oilers team more than I have in the past, and I just think they have the playoff experience that Vancouver and Winnipeg don't have. And I just don't think I think they probably have a very similar level of talent that Toronto has, but Toronto is Toronto.
Yeah.
And predicting them to be the most likely to win the Stanley Cup feels like heresy. So that's why I put Edmonton number 1.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm not
I
happy about
completely fucking disagree. Although to be fair,
Yeah.
I guess not by much because I have Edmonton second. But
Okay.
yeah, I have Edmonton second, but it's mainly because I think that I actually disagree with you. I don't like their depth a lot. I think especially like as you move further, like their winger depth I think is actually rather shit. I think they have really good center depth, but past that it's pretty depressing. I mean, it kind of depends on where they end up playing Adam Henrique, whether they play him at center or winger, but I don't know if it even necessarily matters. I just think that once you get down to the third or fourth pair, it gets a little depressing. The fact that Connor Brown is still getting decent minutes on this team just says wonders about what their depth has been like. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like they're just the same Oilers we've seen over and over repackaged a little bit. Like, they have a little bit of depth. They've got some decent people to pair alongside McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Hyman, what have you, right? But it's just, I don't know. I could see them running. I think the West is even more powerful than they were last year, and by quite a bit. And I could see Edmonton being one of the teams that gets kind of surprised by a team they probably should beat. I think this is a team that a lot of people probably expect to do a lot. Like, when you take the bias out of it, they absolutely have a lot of talent on it. They have a lot of... You spoke on playoff experience from them. They have a lot of experience at losing in the playoffs. Like, go through this entire list. Go through this entire list and, like, who has won a cup here? Legitimately. I mean, Corey Perry. I think that's it.
That's probably it. But I mean, like, losing in the playoffs is better than no experience at all.
Yeah,
right?
but I okay, yeah, that's true. But I still
at least
think
having some playoff experience. That's the one. That's the knock against Vancouver and Winnipeg is that they've literally never done it before. And it just reeks of, not to hurt you even more, Simon, but it reeks of that year that the Flames were first in the West and got their asses beat by the Avs, where it's just like you think you're hot shit, and then you get to the playoffs. I don't know. That's why Vancouver and Winnipeg just feel like flukes to me. Like, they don't even feel like they're in the same kind of.
But I mean, and my next knock on Edmonton is again goaltending. I don't give a single flying fuck how good Skinner has been this year. He's not a playoff goalie. Like, he's not the type of goalie who can go lights out and win it for you. And I just don't. I don't know. When I look at this team, I just don't really see it as a. I don't think this is their year. I still think they have more things to work on. I think you need to bring in more depth. I think you need to completely rework your goaltending. And then I could see this team going and winning it all. But I just don't think, with the current core that they have, I don't think that the model that they have works in the playoffs. When you go that far into June, I don't think it works.
And I don't necessarily disagree. I just think out of all of these teams, they are the most likely for something. Okay.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day,
you have the two best players in the world. And I mean, to kind of fight back against your comments on the depth, I mean, yes, like the winger depth at a certain point is not great, and the fact they're playing Connor Brown is kind of fucking awful. But if you're looking at a first three lines, let's just say we switch out Connor Brown for Corey Perry, which in the playoffs they're going to do anyways, because Corey Perry is even as old and not up to skill as he is now. He's a playoff type. He's a playoff player.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, he's going to outperform what he should in the playoffs. Are you going to tell me you don't find it kind of decent to have a top three lines of Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, Zach Hyman, Ryan McLeod, Liam Draisaitl, Warren Foegele, Evander Kane, Adam Henrique, and Corey Perry? That is not bad.
No,
that is pretty decent depth. That fourth line.
That fourth
line
line's
is
just
kind of
dog.
shit.
Yeah,
But,
that
yeah.
fourth line is depressing.
But
I mean,
the
they'd be a
thing- the
three-line
thing
hockey
with, like,
team.
Yeah, but that's better than when they were a 2-line hockey team. I mean, like, that's kind of the thing. It's like they have a little bit more depth than they did before because of guys like McLeod, because of guys like Vogel. I don't know, and Henrique is another big one. I don't know. I do like this Oilers team a lot more than some of the previous ones. I'm not saying they don't have issues. I'm not saying that fourth line isn't dog shit. I'm not saying that Stuart Skinner is gonna like play lights out in the playoffs. It's just like if I was to put my money on any of them, I'd probably pick Edmonton. As much as that makes me not happy.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. I have them second. I'm fighting against it because I do have a team above them, and I don't actually think they'll win it. I honestly, I think my number one team, I think, is the only one I could actually see potentially coming out on top. I think that they absolutely, at their worst, I think they'd be a conference final. But
Okay. Do you want to transition to that team?
Sure. Let's talk about Vancouver. Because I think Vancouver is the team that you call them a fluke. I don't think they're a fluke. I think that they absolutely have the talent to do it.
I think they're totally a fluke. I have them at 3.
Wow. So you also have Toronto in front of them?
Yeah.
Holy. Oh fuck! I
Now,
spilled my coffee.
Here,
Right.
I'll let you give your reasonings for having them at first before I say my piece.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it all season long with this team. They are absolutely insane. They are so well built and they're so well coached at this point that they are a very well-oiled machine. And I don't see any reason other than potentially choking to be a good, any team can choke in the playoffs. I don't think just the experience that they have is enough. I think, and I mean, if you were putting Toronto above them, clearly you're not ranking the chances of choking as something that you're too worried about. I think Vancouver is a lot better built than Toronto is. I've been saying that since the beginning of the year for Toronto. Like, sure, you can add all the physical guys you want to that Toronto squad. I refuse to believe that a team built by the son of the owner of Boston Pizza will ever be able to win a cup. And I don't know. I like this Vancouver team a lot. When you're playing Lindholm as your third line center, that shows how much depth you have. And I don't know. I think they absolutely have the chance to make an insane run. And I'm super excited for it. I think they're going to be the team that I'll be cheering for in the playoffs. More than in all likelihood, I think that'll be the case. Because I also think that in a situation where Vancouver goes all the way to the finals again and loses would be absolutely hilarious. So I'll do
live trick play reporting from the riots.
Yeah, it'll be great. Oh, holy. Why do you think they're fluky? I guess would be my question.
I don't know. The vibes are just so off. I understand that I've had this conversation all year. I didn't think it was real the first 10 games in. I didn't think it was real the first 20 games in. I didn't think it was real past that, but at a certain point I had to be like, well, I guess we're here now. I don't know. Yeah, they've got good depth, and like looking at this roster, it's even better than I thought it was. I don't know. It's just such the core of this team is not different from the team that we've been seeing. It's even worse, honestly, than some of the past Canucks teams we've seen. They get rid of guys like oh my god, what
Horvat.
Why? Yeah, Bo Horvat. I was thinking Besser. That's different white guy.
Besser's here.
Yeah, Besser's here.
Yeah.
But no, like they got rid of Bo Horvat, and it's like I don't know. I understand that they've been really good. Demko's playing out of his mind. I don't see like a ton of issues with the depth here. Their defense is
so it's
okay,
a vibe.
But they've got Quinn Hughes. Yeah, it's a vibe. I don't know. Like, I can't point out any like real flaws. It just feels like the vibe just feels like a team that gets tossed in the first round. Honestly, I could see them very easily losing in the first round.
That's a fun
because
prediction.
you want to know. You want to know? Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna stake my claim on this. You know what? Because think about this.
Don't you dare do it.
I'm not gonna do that part again. I'm not gonna do that part again.
Your debt is getting high, sir.
My debt is getting high. At least my Stanley Cup prediction is still kind of valid.
Who did you? I don't even remember.
But,
right, yeah.
I picked Dallas. That's looking actually good right about now.
That
New
is-
Jersey, not so much.
Yeah, and my pick's not looking pretty.
But think about who Vancouver's probably going to play in the first round. Who are they probably going to play in the first round?
Oh,
The lowest wild card team.
I mean, I don't have the standings in front of me, but like, Calgary. No,
I
not
know.
really.
If it
Probably like.
if it stays the way it does right now, which there's not that much time left before the playoffs, it's probably Vegas, right? A Vancouver-Vegas series.
In the first
I'm taking
round.
Vegas. It is. I think if the season ended today, that's what it would be, right?
I didn't.
Because
know
you've got.
that is absolutely
Yeah,
terrifying.
Yeah.
Because I'd honestly say Vegas, when they're healthy, is the best team in the West.
Yeah, they've been. It's because Vegas has just been slipping recently, and they're not in any real danger of losing their shot. But they're 3 points back of the Preds, who have that first wild card spot. If the Canucks are 3 points ahead of Colorado. If the playoffs started today, then it would be a Vancouver-Vegas opening round. And if that happens, I think that my prediction of Vancouver getting knocked out in the first round is very realistic. If Vancouver plays like Nashville or somebody or like LA, Vancouver will probably win. I don't know. As soon as Vancouver meets Vegas, I think that's when they probably meet their end. I just don't see anything.
I would put their
happening
odds at
with them
beating
past
Vegas like. I think that is absolutely a Game 6, Game 7 type series. I mean, I'd probably put it like 60-40 in favor of Vegas. Like, I think they're better, but I do think that Vancouver absolutely does have like a fucking boxer's chance in that one. Like, I mean, I don't know. I like this team a lot. I don't think they're as fluky as you make them out to be. I just think I do think Vegas is better. I'd be lying to you if I thought otherwise. But I mean, fuck, I want them to do good. I think it'd be so funny. Like or imagine.
I do too.
It would also be absolutely chaos if Vancouver lost in the first round. To be fair.
Yep.
It would probably be equal chaos. Well, maybe not equal, but it'd be close.
Yeah, I don't know. I do think that. I guess this is also true for Edmonton, but I do think that's kind of a rough division to come out of, honestly.
Very true.
Vancouver, like the potential to play Vegas in the first round and then Edmonton probably in the second. That's pretty rough.
That is
Before
terrible.
then having
I
to
mean,
go
the
play
first.
maybe like the Avs.
Oh my god.
That's a pretty rough.
That is
a
brutal.
rough go.
I mean, and the Central isn't anything. They're not bad either. Like it's nowhere as good, but it's not bad.
Yeah. Anyways, do you wanna talk about our last team on the list that I have second, and I think you have four. You have them fourth.
I have them fourth.
Okay.
Do you want to know why?
Because they're the Leafs.
Because I'll be dead 6 feet in the ground before Toronto wins a fucking cup.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that I've got to look at this a little bit more objectively, just to say.
What about this
yes,
Toronto
this team
team compared to the team that lost in the first round 5 or 6 years in a row is any different or better?
The fact that they didn't lose in the first round last year.
Yeah.
I think
But
I think mentally that means a lot more than you might think.
Oh, absolutely. It does.
Because that was the monkey off the back, right? Because I mean,
is it laying the expectations on more?
No, I don't think it is. I think that because I think the issue with last year's team is that they won in the first round and that was their Stanley Cup, and then they got ambushed by a Florida team that they thought they were way better than because they won in the first round, and they got their asses handed to them. I don't think they're going to go into this with the same expectations because now it's not
Florida.
just like
we want Florida.
Yeah, that was so stupid. I don't think they're gonna. I have a little bit more faith that team isn't going to go into this. They're not going to go into this being like, oh, we just need to win the first round. We just need to win the first round. That's the monkey off the back. They won't have that anymore, and I think they won't be so high off their own supply after winning a single series that they kind of get their feet knocked out from under them. I think if any Leafs team has the correct mentality, I think mentality is so much of it with the Leafs because that any curse, right? It's all mentality. Because none of that shit is real. It's just like the pressure of not having won a cup in 1967 since 1967 in the biggest hockey market in the world.
Yeah.
It's that pressure. It's the mental side of it. And I think if there's any Leafs team that is more equipped to handle that mental side of it, it's this team. Just because they've been around so much and they finally got that singular monkey off the back. I'm not saying I think they're going to win because I think that then as soon as they get to the cup finals, if they do, an even bigger monkey on the back comes there, and it's like, 1967, and then they probably shit the bed there because that pressure is going to be fucking insane. If they're playing, think of it like a fucking Toronto Dallas, fucking Stars aren't Stars fans. Dallas isn't going to be lit on fire if they lose, right? There's a difference in pressure and difference in expectations. But I think I think they have a better chance than Vancouver or Winnipeg.
If they lose in the Stanley Cup, if they lose in the Stanley Cup, they're sending Austin Matthews to the fucking Coyotes for a 7th round pick. That's the expectations that these players are basically living under. Where it's it doesn't matter what you do in the regular season. It's just the second you get into the playoffs with these fans. I mean, you know what the expectations are. I mean, I don't know. I fully think... I'm not saying that they're a first-round exit. That's not... I think it'd be really funny, but I don't think they are. I think they'll probably go 2 or 3 rounds deep, and then they'll probably fall. I just don't think that they're a team that... As a whole, I've never been able to buy into what the Leafs have done with their core, and I don't think the fact that the monkey is off their back is enough to really change that for me. I think teams over the past 6 years, all they have shown, even if it is because this team has choked, has shown that they can beat this Leafs core, no matter how talented it is. I don't think that changes this year. I think there's a lot of very talented teams in the East that could absolutely dismantle this Leafs team. And I don't think Austin Matthews scoring a goal a game will be able to change that.
To that point, and against my own point, looking at the standings, it looks like the Leafs will play one of 2 teams in the first round. One of them you'd hear and say, oh no. The other one you'd hear and say, oh, they're fucked.
Please be Bruins.
The first one being the Florida Panthers, a rematch of last year. That's kind of scary for them. I don't like that at all. But what I like even less is the other one, Toronto Boston.
Yeah!
Oh my god.
Let's do it again! Oh, that'd be so funny. I hope that happens. That is awesome.
If the playoffs started today, that would be the matchup.
That is so awesome. I love that. I hope it happens. Yeah. I hope it happens. Boston, keep sucking. We need to see it. Oh, God. Yeah, the Florida series would be good, too. It wouldn't be as good, but it'd be good.
At least the rematch of last year aspect of it would be
it'd be a good series. I think Florida beats them as well. Florida is absolutely one of the teams in the East that I think would beat this Toronto team.
If I was to redo my rankings, I would move Toronto down, not because I disagree with any of the points I made, but that competition is insane. That Atlantic division is tougher than anything else.
They're not beating Boston. Simple. They're not. I don't care what monkey is off your back. They're not beating Boston. And Florida.
Well, that's an additional monkey.
Yeah, that's an additional monkey. You're stacking the monkeys.
The Leafs have multiple monkeys at this point. The Leafs killed one of the bigger ones.
Listen, it's a whole zoo. It is a whole zoo on their back at this point, and that Boston monkey is absolutely insane. That Boston monkey is actually a full-grown gorilla at this point. So I don't think they're beating Boston no matter what happens. I don't care if they're up 7-0 in the second period and about to complete a sweep, Boston will come back. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Boston is inevitable when it comes to Toronto, and I mean, Florida, I'd give them a fighting chance, but Boston, not in 1,000 years. Put the house. I don't care who's hurt for Boston. I don't care like what ranking they have been all season long. They're beating Toronto, and it's not close. Well, it could be close, but it won't be close at the end.
I'm just gonna like keep this clip just in case.
Just in case.
Mark this moment.
Well, my absolute no faith in Toronto, I don't think that has changed in however long.
No.
I've stuck with my guns. If Toronto wins the cup, I think I owe a lot of people apologies. So
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. I feel fairly confident in that, though.
Yeah. So well, if we want to wrap up, what were your final rankings? You want
So
to go
final
over them again?
rankings were Toronto number 4 because they're Toronto. Number 3, I had Winnipeg, just not necessarily as an indication of how talented I think they are. I just mean look at the top 2, and that pretty much explains it. Number 2, I have Edmonton, and then number 1, I have Vancouver.
Okay. And I have Winnipeg at 4, Vancouver at 3, my fluke teams. I've got Toronto at 2, Edmonton at 1. Not saying that, I don't know. Those are 4 pretty good teams. Again, I don't think any of them actually have what it takes.
Like I said before, I think the only team that I could actually imagine winning the cup is Vancouver. But even then, with how dumb the West is, it's going to be a very tough road for them. So they'll have to do a lot of impressing. But I mean, if any of the teams can pull off the amount of upsets that they'd have to, it probably is Vancouver. Because, I mean, Toronto would have to beat Boston and then whoever the hell monster they'd face in the second round. Like, it'd be ugly for Toronto, and God, it would get to their heads so quick. I know, I don't believe in that Toronto team at all. I mean, no matter how much talent they have, they've had that much talent for 6 or 7 years at this point. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel fairly confident in my rankings. I wish I could put Winnipeg higher because I really like that team, but I don't know. They run into the same issue of just like how insane that fucking Western side is across the board.
Yeah.
With the NHL trade deadline now officially behind us, and it was quite the trade deadline to say the least, with a lot of moves, a lot of very, very elite players moving to very good playoff teams, and some teams basically deciding that the cap does not exist, which is always fun, and a whole bunch of just terrific moves all over the boards. There's not really a lot for steals, but I mean, we'll get into it. I mean, I don't know where we want to start here, Caleb. I guess we'll just start at the top of the list with Gensel being moved to the Hurricanes for Bunting, and I do not have the draft picks right in front of me, but I believe it was
conditional first and a conditional fifth, and then like
I thought they got a first for him, as at least a first, because I mean, this has been a move that's been rumored for a little bit. I think we all knew that Gensel was going to be leaving Pittsburgh basically without a doubt. It didn't make a lot of sense for Pittsburgh to hold on to him. Crosby definitely made it clear that if it was his decision, they would not be moving on, which is, I think, a conversation that we'll be having in the offseason as to whether what's Crosby's relationship with the Pittsburgh Penguins at this point looking like. I mean, I think everybody has kind of assumed that he's a Pen for life, but I mean, at this point, they're kind of making it clear that they're not really looking to contend, and is that something Crosby wants to end his career on, or does he want to make one last run at it? But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Carolina just getting better. I mean, this is a terrific move for Carolina. I mean, Michael Bunting is definitely no slouch. He's definitely a pretty good top 9 winger. But, I mean, you just got one of the best wingers in the East in Jake Gensel. I actually would argue that he's a fairly underrated player. I think he's a terrific sniper. I mean, you could definitely put part of that to being the fact that he played most of his career at this point on a line with Crosby, which, of course, that's going to do wonders for you. But, I mean, I don't think he's going to have any issues. I've seen people say that they think he's going to flop in Carolina, but I think that's horseshit. I think he's going to be fine. I think when you elite players like that, that's like saying Draisaitl's going to flop without McDavid. It's like, no, he's not. He might be worse, but he'll still be a very, very good player. And I think we're going to see that with Gensel.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Carolina as a whole, like the other move they pulled that went a little bit more under the radar, but is still going to be a high impact move, I think, is getting Kuznetsov for a third. That his price obviously depressed because he's had some personal issues, but it looks like he's getting back on track, which is awesome to see. And he just scored his first goal with Carolina, and that was a huge thing for him. So that was great. But yeah, like overall, like you put those two on a line together, and I know it's having lots of success so far. I think that it's really interesting because this isn't something that Carolina normally does in terms of like picking up rentals right before the deadline. They're not necessarily a team that does that. I think it's a big sign that they think this is their year, because it's like, how many times have we seen Carolina get to the conference finals and get swept, right? What they had like an insane, like, what was it, 8-12 game losing streak in the conference finals. I don't know if it's actually that big at this point, but
I think it is.
That's kind of where they've gotten stopped. And this is the move where it's like, yeah, like we need something to push us over the top. And Gensel was the best player out there on the market, and they got him. And obviously, really small sample size as of now, because he's only played like 2 games with them. Because he was on injured reserve.
I was gonna say.
Oh yeah. He's off injured reserve now, so
okay.
that's
I actually didn't know that.
Completely okay to play. But it is the kind of thing where it's like, ooh, we haven't seen a lot from him yet, but that'll be the kind of thing where I'm sure it'll be the season as he builds.
He had an assist against Florida.
Yeah,
he had an assist in a 4-0 win against Florida, and past that, he only had 1 shot in his debut as a Carolina Hurricane against the Rangers. So, I mean, so far, like you mentioned,
he's
not a
coming
lot.
off injury.
Yeah, no. Right now, the funny thing about this entire thing is the fact that, I mean, sure, in the last couple seasons, we've seen him be that point per game player. Carolina doesn't need that. They need a top 6, which, I mean, sure, you're trading for him to be that top guy, but they're deep enough that let's say he's hurt. He's still playing hurt right now as we're speaking, right? Like, let's say there's a world where that's the case and he's just not the same player for the first little bit. Carolina doesn't need him to be. They just need him to be that same sniper we've seen from him in Pittsburgh. And, I mean, he totally can be. I think that...
Yep.
I don't know. I don't think expectations should be high for him in Carolina. Yeah, he just doesn't need to be a top guy.
Well, I just think the expectations are for the team, right?
Yes,
like I think it's something that you hope. It's something that you hope elevates you. Not necessarily. It's the success of this trade will not be judged by how he plays these final 20 games down the stretch. It'll be judged by how he performs in the playoffs and how far Carolina is able to go. If Carolina gets knocked out in the second round, then I think you kind of deem this trade a failure, right?
Yeah.
I know he's got 1 more year on it, and like because he has an extra year, he's not just a free agent, I believe. I don't want to spread misinformation.
I was gonna say I don't know off the top of my head, but I'll believe you. I
think just trying to remember from when we talked about him before. I do think he has that extra year, so at least they'll kind of have a 2-year window to take a shot at it. But yeah, like look at that lineup.
It's insane. They've got such a ridiculous team.
Talk about a very deep team with the top end talent to match. It's something that's going to be really exciting to watch in the playoffs. I've always been like a fucking yummy on the 4th line. Oof.
I know. It's like insane. Even like look at that defense. Holy. Like let's just sit here gushing over how insane Carolina is. But like,
I mean, I've been a closet Canes fan for long enough to say that
I don't know about closet. Well. I don't know. The closet was left behind years ago, my friend. I mean, even between the pipes,
we love him.
Yeah, Frederick Anderson. I mean, Koshetkov, I think is how you pronounce it. Like, they're both very serviceable. Anderson is not the goalie he used to be, but he's still very good. Like, I don't know. I think that the sky's the limit. The only thing that can stop them now is the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
Yeah, that like
Oh yeah.
I think it is a foregone conclusion that they'll make it back to the conference game. It's just whether they can pull that monkey off their back. Because at a certain point, when does it become the Toronto Maple Leafs first round of the Hurricanes? Right? Like it's at what point does it become
Well,
that
the
thing?
pressure,
Oh,
that kind of pressure isn't there for them, though.
I don't think
right?
it is.
Like,
No, that's not what I mean. I'm asking at what point do you think that becomes the case? Because do you think if they lose, if they get swept in the conference finals this year, do you think that starts to become the narrative? They just can't do it. They're good enough to get far, but they're not good enough to get farther.
I think that's kind of already the narrative, but I think it will never have the same kind of pressure as anything with the Leafs just because of the market they play in.
True. That's also true.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you want to move on from the Hurricanes?
Yeah.
I think
was the.
Sorry.
This next one I think is probably the most interesting trade, honestly, in terms of like Gensel we've talked about for months and months and months, but this one kind of came out of nowhere, and I think was a huge trade, like one of the ones we're going to go back on.
I will say that
in a few years.
I think the Bowen Byram going to Buffalo, that part of it is shocking. The fact that specifically Buffalo is where he went was very surprising. I don't think the fact that he was moved was that out there, because I think that's been a conversation that has been had for a while, and I mainly know that because there was at one point conversations about him coming to Calgary, so I'll cry a solemn tear about the fact that didn't happen. But I think he's one of those guys he's very good when he's good, which is kind of a nuisance to say, but like injuries have been the issue for Byram, and I think he's such a talented defenseman that I love him back there for the Sabres. I think everybody, including me, have been dying to see the Sabres break out. I love that team so much, like what they've got back there, especially defensively. Holy smokes. Like, if you give me a minute, I'll pull up their like defensive lines at this point. You got like the young talent that they have back there is just bonkers. And I mean, even offensively, I mean, I love that team so much. I won't even try and hide it. Like, you're a closet Canes fan. Holy smokes, that Sabres team has my heart. Like they've got it all. Yeah. They've got athletic young goalie, great defense, fun offense. Oh, you've got me sold. Like it's just, that's so fun. I can't wait to see
Bowen Byram, Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power goes crazy.
I know. It's so cool. Like it's just bonkers that they haven't broken out yet. Frankly, I think I'm just like counting the days. I thought it was going to be this year. I think I actually had them doing fairly well when we did do our preseason predictions, but I mean, just looking at that, holy smokes. Like, I really like this Sabres team. I don't think that this is really, they're not close to being, I think they're the type of team that next year I really think could make a big splash if things continue to spiral in the direction they're going. I mean, even offensively, they have so much talent as well. If Levi continues to develop the way that he has been, I mean, he's hit some roadblocks this year, but if he turns into that goalie that people were predicting for him to be, sky's the limit with this Sabres team, truly. Like, they've drafted so well.
I do think the Sabres have been on a bit of a tear since this trade happened, too. I do think they've got kind of buoyed by that. I don't have the... if they want to win streak or something, but... They've won 3 straight. They've been playing pretty well. I think
they've got, like,
I don't know.
One comment I'll make on the Sabres before we like move into something else is the fact that, like, when I look at like a list of players over the last 3 or 4 years that I really wanted the Flames to go after because I just think they're fun, or I really wanted the Flames to go after because, like, even like scouting ahead to like the draft and stuff like that. The Sabres at this point have, like, I can list them, like, Alex, I think it's Touch.
Alex Tuck, yeah.
It's Tuck, whatever. Alex Tuck, Dylan Cousins, Peyton Krebs, Zach Benson. I wanted us to draft Benson whenever. I think it was this year that was his draft. Like, Benson was the guy I wanted the Flames to pick up. Like, it's insane. Like, how well they've done everything. I'm just such a huge fan of how they've done. They're doing the same thing that I've really wanted the Flames to do for the most part, like with their drafting. Now that the Flames have picked up a crap ton of picks. If the Flames look like Buffalo in 2 to 3 years, I'm happy. Like, I know a lot of people have been, as an argument for why tanking doesn't work, they're like, oh, but you don't want to be Buffalo, right? Like, fuck, I would die to be Buffalo. That team must be so much fun to watch, even if they're not winning as many games, because of the talent they have. Like, the Flames just don't have that right now. Like, God, I mean, if we keep going, I'm just going to keep saying the same shit about Buffalo, but, like, fuck, this is such a good team.
I do think it's important to realize. I do think the Avs almost got the better end of the trade, though.
Oh, sure.
In terms of what they need right now.
That's a good point. Like, we should talk about the Avs side for sure.
Like getting. Like, I think they won the trade. In terms of getting Middlestat.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that just your playoff push now.
I mean, yeah, exactly, right? Like, that just makes your depth so much better. Because when I do look at this Colorado team, the one comment I have is depth. I mean, what they have is not impressing me. And I think Middlestat helps you out there quite a bit. And I think...
oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not bad. It's nowhere near what their cup run looked like as for depth. So I think this Colorado team is very much... They need to rely very heavily on what McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen can do. And we've seen them be able to do a lot, especially in the playoffs. But and obviously Cale Makar, not even leaning into the defense. But, like... They have all of the talent in the world to do it. It's just depth. And like you mentioned, Caleb, Casey Middlestat instantly helps you out there. So I'm with you on that one. I think as for who won the trade right now, I have no issue giving that win to Colorado.
But it is definitely a futures move for Buffalo in terms of getting better for the future. I think it's a very win-win type of situation.
I could see Casey Middlestat continuing to grow as well. I think that on both sides. Absolutely. I think this is the type of thing where these are two players
because it's two young guys.
Yeah, I was about to say these are two guys who maybe hadn't seen their full potential on the team that they were on, and you're basically giving them a second chance to maybe two players who I'd argue didn't even need them, but I'm sure it doesn't hurt to get one.
Yeah. Speaking of, I was going to try to transition this, but I'm not going to. You want to talk about why Vegas is going to kill us all?
Fuck Vegas.
We got hurdles.
Let's talk about.
Together. We talked about Hannafin to death, so we don't have to like go too in depth on it. But obviously Hannafin's a big one. But they also got Hurdle and Mantha. Like
I think we just talk about the team as a whole because like what the hell even? Is that?
Exactly.
Like it is so bonkers. Just even looking at that defense, what the hell? Hannafin, Pietrangelo, Braden McNabb, Shea Theodore. Are you kidding me? Like in between the pipes, they have the same goalie that they had last year in Aiden Hill, Logan Thompson. Like, what the fuck? Like, that's not fair. Mark Stone's going to come back. I mean, Tomas Hurdle, both of them, we're just waiting for them to return. And then once you get that, I mean, Ivan Barbashev and Jack Eichel and Marchessault already an elite first line. And that's missing arguably two of their best players. Like, it's just...
Yeah.
What the hell? Like, they can't keep getting away with it. It's so frustrating watching this happen because you know Vegas. If I were a betting man and I really needed to make a good quick buck, I'd put the house on Vegas. Like this feels like another Vegas Cup win. Like it's the same thing that we saw with the Lightning, where it was too obvious almost on a couple of the years that we saw the Lightning win it. That's what it feels like this year for Vegas. No matter how powerful the West looks, this playoff Vegas team is unstoppable. They have so many pieces that are just insane. And, I mean, you're talking about playoff experience. We were talking about that earlier in the pod. Like, they've got that in basically every single player on the roster in the fact that they had so many returning players this year as well from their cup run that I would argue another big reason I believe in this team is, let's say, in a magical world, Aiden Hill chokes in the first round. Doesn't play great. Logan Thompson is just as qualified of a playoff goalie, in my opinion. And I think it's so dumb. I'm going to keep saying that throughout the entire time we talk about Vegas. But this entire team is just... Who's going to stop them? Seriously. Like, who are
The one thing is, Vegas has not been playing well as of recently. I mean, a lot of that is because Stone and... Yeah, you can say it doesn't matter. But it's the same conversation that we had for Vancouver and the previous segment. where it's like, ooh, Vancouver, Vegas in the first round. It's not like that's an easy matchup for Vegas
Oh, God,
either,
no.
right?
Vegas is probably
Because
playing
we're
the
talking
hardest
about-
team in the first round.
Yeah, well, we're talking about Vancouver having a potentially like murderer's row leading into the cup, and it's like Vegas is going to have the same thing if they keep at where they are.
Oh, sure.
Because they're going to play potentially Vancouver in the first round, probably Edmonton in the second, Colorado or Dallas in the third, and then whoever comes out of the East is going to be.
And you know what's the
like,
funny
really
part
good
about that
too.
entire thing? I think Vegas wins all of those series.
Yeah,
Like
they have. I'm not saying I disagree with you, but I mean recent. Again, they'll get Mark Stone back and they'll get Thomas Hurdle on that lineup, and it will look a lot better. But they have not been playing very good recently. That is the one thing that gives me pause. It's like heading into the playoffs. if
they're
they
literally
continue
going to have
keep
a
up with their
completely
ass, they
different
don't have a lot
top
of
line.
momentum.
They're going to have a completely different top line
Yeah,
in the playoffs.
yeah.
So it's just like their first line
that's
right now
that's the
basically becomes their
LTIR.
second line. Like,
Yeah,
think about
well,
it like
that's
that.
the LTIR.
That's what I mean.
conundrum,
Right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just... I don't know. They basically
When-
just, like, move...
when do you?
Their entire team, like, they just move it down. Literally. Just think about it like that, and it instantly
Yeah.
just... It's dumb. It's dumb. It shouldn't be the
Yeah.
case, but it is.
When do you?
and
When do you think they? When do you think they even fix that?
They won't.
Do you think they fix that?
No, they won't. Because it's been an issue. The first
Okay,
team to
here's-
do it. Do you know what the first team that really got caught doing it was? I'm curious if you even. would
Well, I mean,
remember.
I know Tampa did it a bunch.
Nope. There's
But
a
I
team
don't
before
think they're
them.
the first.
Do you have a guess?
Who did it before Tampa?
Chicago Blackhawks in 2015.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Who'd they stash?
I don't remember who they stashed anymore, but they were the first noticeable team that got away with it, and a lot of people after that season wanted them to fix it, and they did. And it's not a hard fix either. You just keep the playoff hard cap as the same. You make it so that the cap doesn't change, or whatever it is. Like, you make it so that a player has to play the final game of the season or something. Like, there's 1,000 ways you could do it, right?
Yeah.
But it's not a hard fix. It's just that the NHL has remained stubborn for, at this point, we're approaching 10 years of the NHL just not changing it, which is why I'm hesitant to believe that anything's going to change. And I think that this is going to quickly become, it's almost like it's the NHL's version of, what's it called? Rest management, load management. Like, it's the NHL's version of it.
Yeah, it is, but it's even more like, not devious isn't the right word, but I guess devious.
Devious
Devious
is a good word for it.
In terms of load management, your players just rest and they don't get hurt. But in this, you add players that you normally would not be able to because of the cap. Like,
and your players rest.
I don't know. And your players rest. I don't know. It is something they need to fix, and yes, this team will look completely different. However, I do want to say that since February 12th, the Golden Knights have only won 4 games, and they have lost, 10. They're
And you know
4
what's the
and
funny
10 in their
thing? I
last 4
guarantee you the
games.
Vegas Golden Knights do not give a single fuck because they're going to win 16 games come April. So I don't know. I at this point
Gotta make it in first.
Caleb, I hope
Gotta
I'm
make
wrong.
it in first.
I know. I think they'll make it in. The second things get scary, they'll just pull someone off LTIR or whatever. Like, it's not, or I guess they can't, but
I mean, they can't do that. They can't.
I still think
Minnesota's only 4 points out.
Are you telling me
Minnesota's only
looking
4 points out.
at the roster they currently have, even without Mark Stone and Tomas Hurdle, are you telling me that's not a playoff team?
I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here, but I do think it's something that you need to be concerned about.
Sure.
If you're Vegas.
You definitely can't overlook your final opponents of the season, that's for sure. But I don't think they'll get pushed out.
They just lost to the Flames.
And that says a
all I'm
lot.
saying.
You're right. Holy shit, they're not making the playoffs. It's over. It's literally over. If they lost to the Flames, are you kidding?
Nobody loses to the
I'm
fucking
also
Flames. See,
kidding. Because
Colorado beat us like 7-1.
The Flames
Carolina
always beat
beat us
teams
like
that they
7-2.
shouldn't win. They should beat and then lose to Chicago. So I don't think that's a big worry.
Yeah. Speaking of the Flames, we want to move into a former Flame, Tyler Toffoli. That was the that's an interesting one. And if we want to talk about the Flames thing with this right off the bat, in terms of Craig was right, holy shit, what if this makes the Toffoli trade look so much better in comparison, especially with Sharon Govich playing the way he is.
Can I say something? I was totally fucking right. I don't know if you remember it, but when that trade happened, I went, I don't hate it. This Sharon Govich guy, he has one hell of a shot. I don't know if you remember that. I totally called that. I didn't think he would be anywhere close to the player he is right now, but I remember saying that I was like, out of what we could have gotten as like that top 6 type guy, I don't hate it. I really like Sharon Govich. I think he has a hell of a shot. That's all I remember saying. Like, I think that he would play on an excellent... I mean, I was wrong on this part. But I remember saying that I thought he would be excellent right next to Huberdeau, which didn't end up happening, I don't think. But either way, I'm so happy that I got that right. Because out of all the things, I remember seeing that trade and thinking, like, honestly, like, it's not bad. Like, I think people were overestimating Toffoli a little bit. I still think he's a terrific player, but he's not somebody who was ever going to match what he had that season with Calgary. Like, I didn't think he was going to repeat. No matter where he was, whether it was Calgary, whether it was New Jersey, whether it was on the Lightning, I didn't think he was scoring that same amount of points. He's just not. It was more a thing of his surroundings where he absolutely had to play up. But I think on a team where he was expected to do it again and all of a sudden the lights were on him, whether that would have been in Calgary or in New Jersey, I didn't think it was happening. I actually think with Sharon Govich, the expectations were so low that it let him blossom, and he turned into one heck of a hockey player.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. I also think that selling off of Toffoli, I don't actually know how well he's done this season.
He had a really strong start, and then he fell off.
I wouldn't be shocked if it's just more so a move because of how low the Devils have played to expectations.
Well, like that's Devils across the board. Like, that included Toffoli. Like, Toffoli had a really strong start where he had a large amount of goals. And then, like, it was kind of like a switch because Sharon Govich had a slow start with the Flames as well. And then out of nowhere, it just went like, doo. And it just never switched back. Like, it happened in, like, around November, December. But, like, at this point, Toffoli hasn't had a bad year. He just hasn't had the same... He's had what I would have expected Toffoli to have before last year's season with the Flames.
No, that's fair. 26 goals, 18 assists, 44 points.
That's an average Toffoli season.
Yeah. I do think in terms of like how he fits with the Jets, what do you think about that? I think that's an interesting addition to that kind of team. Yeah.
I will say that the line that they're currently throwing out, Nikolai Ehlers, Sean Monahan, Tyler Toffoli. I think that's an interesting line. My main comment is I don't know who the big playmaker is on that line. That's in my head. That's 3 people who all like to score a lot of goals. Like Sean Monahan, everybody in Calgary knows what he's good at, sitting right on the crease and just popping it right in. And he's really good at it, and we've seen that in this bounce back year with Winnipeg, or since he's been traded mainly. But like, that's just what he's great at. Ehlers has one of the better shots. It's insane to me how few people talk about how insane of a shot he has. In my opinion, he has a top 5 shot in the NHL. It's incredible. Like, he has such a good release on it. But, I mean, Tyler Toffoli being added to that, I think is spectacular. I don't disagree with you. I think it's one heck of a line. I just kind of question the fact that, like, it feels like 3 scorers playing with 1 puck almost is kind of what I'd call it.
Yeah.
A little bit.
You can always mix that up, though.
Oh,
you
absolutely.
can always mix that up.
I mean, in my head, I think you throw... And maybe this is a little odd because it would feel very strange to see Scheifele on a second line for Winnipeg, but I feel like throw Scheifele out there with Toffoli and Ehlers, and I think that works a lot better. I think that'd be a really, really nice line.
Or just make that your first line. You don't even have to put him down.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. Reason why I wouldn't put Kyle Connor down there is he's another sniper. Like, although I trust Kyle Connor to create for himself a bit more than I trust Toffoli or Ehlers. So it's that type of thing for me. Where if I was Winnipeg, I think that's what I'd do. Then again, so far from what I've seen, it's working. So maybe I'm just talking out of my ass.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's been it was one of those things where I think the Toffoli and Monahan moves were really good for Winnipeg. Maybe not just because they're former Flames, but just I don't know.
Absolutely.
It did feel like that team needed
They're just
some
good
extra
players.
skill.
Well, and it's two
Yeah.
scores. Like, people don't talk about how good
Yep.
of a scorer Monahan was before the injuries. And sure, he's not the same player.
And now
but he's still
he's
got
been
that finesse
revitalized.
in front of the net. Well, because the
Yeah.
main issue with Monahan is he's just not the same. He's not the same skater, which he never was an incredible skater to begin with. But he's not the same skater, and he's truly become like almost a a poor man's Pavelski is almost what I'd call him, where he just sits in front of the net and that's where he makes his money, and that's not a bad thing. I think that's actually what made Pavelski so valuable is the fact that he was so incredible at like sitting in front of the net, whether it be tipping, whether it be rebounds, whether it just be positioning. Pavelski made a career off that, and I actually think if Monahan truly decides, like, I think part of me when I think of Monahan still thinks that he wants to be that elite center that people thought he'd be, which I just don't. I think if he moves away from that and truly becomes that specialist that Pavelski became towards the back end of his career, I think John Monahan will be in the league for another 10 years. And I just think that that's
healthy.
such a rare. Oh yeah, that is the conversation, of course. But I just think that's such a rare skill set to have, and Monahan absolutely has it. And if he keeps on working on it, he can really make some. He could probably have some elite scoring seasons for sure.
Yeah. Speaking not necessarily speaking of elite scoring seasons, I don't expect this out of the next guy. Adam Henry, going to the Oilers. This is their classic like kind of floundering for depth move late in the season. I don't know. I don't know what I can much say on this. I think we talked about this a little bit before, in terms of the Oilers as a potential landing spot, and it's like it works, and it's definitely like a it's the kind of move that you expect them to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's something where it's like, okay, yes, this is good, but go prove it in the playoffs.
Yeah.
If this is the depth move that's going to make you
I mean,
actually more than a two-player.
We talked about it a bit before, like in the last segment. But I mean, I don't know what else I really have to say on this Oilers team other than I mean, like you mentioned, prove it. Like, cool, you look good. I like what I see. Go do something with it, right? Like I think what I'm looking at right now looks no better than that conference team that lost to the Avs. That's what I think in my head. And that's still a compliment because that team was very good. I don't know. Their goaltending, I know that Stuart Skinner, and this is me repeating the same thing I said before. I know Skinner has been good at points. Like, he has shown that he can be that starter for them. And I know how much Oilers and Jack Campbell is the other guy that they've got. They're trying to trying to restart his career basically. Like, it's just, I don't know if out of any of the things that I really would have wanted to see the Oilers, and I feel weird saying it because obviously I'm happy they didn't because I think this would have been the smart move and I'm a Flames fan. I think that they should have made and I wonder if there's something around them doing it. I think they totally should have tried to get rid of some cap in between the pipes and try and trade for one of the elite goalies. Like, if I was the
but like that's easier said than done because how the hell are they going to get rid of Jack
Campbell? What I would have done? I don't remember what the price tag on Swayman was, but he would have been the person I would have gone for if I was the Bruins. Because out of all the elite goalies, and I do consider Swayman to be fairly elite, out of all the elite goalies out there, I think he would have been the cheapest. Because he's still on a fairly manageable contract. I don't know how long he has left, but I don't think it's too long.
The Bruins aren't going to trade him, though.
Yep. They were trying to.
The Bruins aren't going to trade him.
They were trying to.
No, they were trying to trade Allmark. They were trying to trade Allmark. They weren't trying to trade
there was rumors
Swayman.
About both.
I think the big one was Allmark because Allmark specifically, like, I think their plan is to keep Swayman because he's younger and trade Allmark because I know Allmark like specifically came out and said, like, and talked about the trade rumors and like it was almost I think it was a done deal to send him somewhere, but he vetoed it. It was an Allmark deal. I don't think they were going to get Swayman. They don't have the cap space, and and
Yeah.
nobody is going to take on the
Again, we're living in a magic
kinda
world
stuck.
where they did things differently. But like, it's just when I look at this
They're
team,
kinda
there is one hole, and it's the piece of cheese that is currently guarding the net. And and Stuart Skinner, he has been fine at times. Like, he has been perfectly fine at points, but he's inconsistent. That has been the comment that I will continue to make. And you can hide an inconsistent goalie when you have a good defense. The Oilers do not have a good defense. They have an okay defense. They have a playoff defense. Do they have a good enough defense to hide Stuart Skinner when he's just not having his best game? No, they do not. They will be ripped apart by the best of the best in the playoffs if Stuart Skinner can't stand on his head. And I actually think that Stuart Skinner's performance is going to decide how far they go.
And I think that's fair.
If he plays well, I think they could be a conference team again. I think they'd lose to a Dallas. I think they'd lose to a Vegas. I think they'd lose to really one of those two teams, maybe even the Avs again. Like, I think they'd lose to any of those three teams, even if Stuart Skinner stands on his head. If Stuart Skinner doesn't, I don't know who they're aiming to play in the first round, but if Skinner doesn't show up looking, probably LA, maybe an upset there. It just, like, I don't know. Like, it's completely on Skinner's shoulders, I think, in my head. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I could see that. I think you're maybe not necessarily giving him as much credit as he deserves, because I do think he is pretty good, but I don't know. It does come down to him, I think. And I do think it speaks a lot to what this Oilers team is that when we're talking about the Adam Henrique trade, we immediately forget about Adam Henrique and start talking about everything else. This is like it's the same move the Oilers make every year. It's not anything special. I do think the last move on our list is something that's really interesting, and I do think is something that moves the needle. Is Tarasenko to the Panthers?
Yes.
I think that's a really interesting one.
That's a fun trade.
I think that it's a super fun trade. The Panthers are going for it, man. Like, they're
and they should,
because they're at the top of I think they should.
They absolutely
and they're at the top
should.
of their division. They're fresh off of a Cup Finals appearance, and they're even better than they were last year. Like, they just have such positive momentum.
Which is so
Reinhart's
surprising.
playing out of his mind. Oh yeah.
Like, nobody thought
awesome
they'd be the same
see.
team, and they're a better team.
Yep.
Like, the one thing that they've been missing.
Kind of rough, but...
Yeah, but they're also missing Ekblad currently, which I don't know if he's going.
Is he coming back?
I don't know if he's rumored to come back or not. So that's something I guess we should probably look into. But I mean, even without him, I don't hate their chances. Like, that defense, you said it looks rough. It's not as deep as I would like it to be, but it still is fairly good. I still think that's a very capable defense for the most part. Like, it's a little bit weaker on the left side. Yeah, well, Ekblad's a left defenseman, which is a big reason why they're so weak on that side. But I mean, even either way you look at it, I don't think it's the defense that is going to win them a cup if they win, right? Like, it's like, I think if they get Ekblad back,
he's playing well too.
Yeah, that too. Like, and he's a playoff goalie through and through. So I mean,
oh yeah.
It's just, when I look at this team, all I think of is, holy shit, they're good. Like, when I look at that top three lines, more top two, but even that third line, Okposo, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that center's name, but Nick Cousins, like, that line is great. Like, that is a really good line with Okposo and Cousins. I don't know anything about the center, sorry, but it's the type of thing where...
neither do I.
Yeah, I haven't heard his name before, but... It's when you have both of those guys playing wing on your third line, that says a lot. Like, Okposo is not the same player he was maybe 5 years ago, but he's still a very, very skilled winger, and he's a leader. Is a big thing. He's been captain of many teams at this point. I think he was a captain for the Islanders
Buffalo.
at one point. He was a captain for the Buffalo Sabres. Like, he's a player who at this point is a known leader, and I think that is a nice addition to this Florida team, where last year we saw them add on a lot of vets. They're doing the same thing this year. I mean, I like it. I like the formula that Florida has here. I'm a big fan, so I'm excited to see what they do.
I do too. And I think Tarasenko fits in really well to what they're doing because it's just more playoff experience, it's more scoring, it's just everything more on top of what they're doing. It's the perfect kind of rental. And I think he's already playing pretty well. Like I saw him scoring a few days ago for them. It's the perfect kind of move for them. I can't say anything bad about it, honestly. It's one of the better landing spots I could have seen him going to.
Yep, I've got
Um,
it feels perfect, honestly. I can't
yeah,
imagine him going anywhere else now.
yeah. If we want to wrap up, do you have like a favorite deal for any one of these teams?
Um,
Like who do you think got from a single deal? We could probably I could say who got the most better, but you could just say Vegas.
I mean,
But like what
I
single
kind
deal
of,
do you think improved?
if you want me to give you a single deal, I think I would probably say Tarasenko, because I think that makes the most sense in my head for the Panthers. Grouping
Mm,
them together, I will just immediately go out there and say that what the Golden Knights did is genius. I think, especially when they
yeah.
made that Hannafin trade and basically said, "Here, I know you want a first round pick. We'll give you a first round pick, but as for the year, just give us like one more day, and we'll let you know." Like that little clause on the
Yeah.
deal was so fucking genius. That was like, I remember seeing that and going like, "Yeah." Like when they got Hurdle, I was like, "Yeah, no shit." Like of course they had that. They had
So
to have
smart.
something in the oven. Like it's brilliant. It's honestly the smartest move they could have made, and I was very impressed. Honestly, that is one of the. I don't remember a single time I've ever seen something like that, but I was so impressed by Vegas, and I think
Oh yeah.
as much as I want to get mad at them for all the stuff they're doing, everything they're doing is legal. Like it's
It's
honestly more.
legal.
It's more the league's fault. They're just the smartest hockey team right now. That's why they're winning.
Like
Like
take advantage of it if you can, right? Like what
absolutely.
like you can't get mad at it if it's something your team could also do, right?
Right there, right? Like it's just they're pretty much just beating everyone off of the fact that they're smarter. They're playing the game
Yeah.
smarter than anyone else is right now, and they're building a modern hockey team. The modern strategy that we're seeing succeed in the playoffs is lots of depth and lots of good defense, and not necessarily needing an elite goalie, but having a good enough goaltender to get you far. Like they're showing you don't have to pay a goalie, which has been the conversation in the last few years. They've just brought in goalies who, honestly, I mean, other than Fleury, they haven't had anyone that big name. Like Aiden Hill's fine, but he's not your elite playoff goalie, right? Like that's not who I think of normally. And I think that's the thing with Vegas. Honestly, like it's as much as I want to hate them, it's the type of thing where you got to just almost applaud them. Like there's going to be a book 10 years down the
Yep.
road of how Vegas outsmarted the rest of the league because that's what they're doing. They are
Yep.
years ahead of everyone else, and that's why they're winning.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching this week. If you want to check out more of our dumb faces, check us out on our YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that good stuff. If you don't want to look at us but want to hear our voices, boom. Nope. That way.
Oh.
I'm getting mixed up so much with where I am. I gotta like I'm finally back in not a dungeon anymore, so I know where I am.
You no longer need to
Fresh
shout
Take
out
Network.
the deep depths of hell every single episode.
Oh yeah, it's nice to not be there anymore and be from the comfort of my own home. But yeah, Fresh Take Network. Check us out there. We had Josh on
Yep.
this week, which was awesome. Obviously, he's got lots of stuff on there as well. So check all of that out. Shout out for this week. There's a couple things. We didn't talk about basketball at all this week, so I'm just gonna roll out with like a double pronged basketball shout out about two different things, and I'm just gonna run through them. Number one, I think this is one of the coolest things I've seen in a stadium in terms of the in stadium video. Because they've always got the kiss cam, they've got like all the sort of like satellite stuff around that, right, where it's
Yeah.
just like these special cameras, these are in between commercials kind of thing.
Yeah.
The Sacramento Kings, who I'm giving my shout out, half of my shout out to, because one of the things they had on their game against the Lakers, what was it called? Oh man, I don't remember what they called it, but essentially the idea was that it was a cam that would, because the game was already over, the Kings were going to win, It was a cam that just focused on all of the Lakers fans leaving the building. And so you just see all of the
So
Lakers
fucking
fans
awesome.
filing out, and they'll cut between like people getting up out of their seats, and it was fantastic. I wish I man, I wish I had the story in front of me.
That's so funny.
To know what that was called. They had a funny name for it too.
I thought you were
But
gonna
that was
talk about
fantastic.
another Kiss Cam related thing that went viral in the last week, but we don't need to touch on that one. Go look it up.
Oh, yeah, I genuinely have no idea what you're referring to.
I will show you
So,
after the
I will do
podcast because
that.
it's absolutely
Okay.
hilarious. But like, it's not something.
Okay.
It's not age appropriate to the average viewer. so
fair
look it
enough.
up. Look
I
at it
think- I
if you
think
want to.
Sacramento
But
Kings thing is good then.
yeah.
Because that's just funny. Another thing that's just funny, because I did want to give like a little double pronged shout out here. I'm giving the other half of my basketball shout out to Victor Wembanyama, for his quote on Rudy Gobert,
Oh, yeah.
where he was
That's a good
basically
one.
saying like, "Oh yeah, like Gobert should win Defensive Player of the Year this year. Like he should get it. Like basically because he's not going to have much time left." Or whatever he said. It's like that's such a
It's-
badass quote
it
to
is
just
a
be
fun
like, "Oh
quote.
yeah, take it now because I'm gonna win this award for the next like 20 years." So get it in while you
Yeah,
can.
fair enough.
What a badass thing for a 19, 18-year-old kid to say.
Oh, what
I love
Wanyama's
it.
been like, it's the same thing with the Bedard stuff, where like half the shit I've seen Bedard say, it's like, fuck yeah, dude. Yeah, like he's that's a guy who's had media training since he was 11. Like, it's the same thing with Wembanyama. I think at this point you gotta think he's just like he knows what to say to get the press rolling. Like it's,
Yeah.
and that's not to take away from the quote at all because I think it's awesome. But yeah, no, absolutely, like that is so funny to me. Because he's
Yeah,
not wrong. Like he's just telling the truth.
Yeah.
Like oh god,
He's right.
Like yeah, give it to him this year because he's taking the next 10.
Yeah. The real quote was, "After that, it's no longer his turn." So badass. I love it.
Oh god, yeah, no, like that is the cool thing that we're starting to see. We're seeing players embrace the press, which I mean,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit biased considering me and you both somewhat work in the press, but like it is pretty cool.
Yeah.
even if they're doing it on purpose, it's kind of fun. It adds to the news cycle that the whole thing is. I love it. I don't know if I have a specific shout out this week. I mean, oh, no, I don't really got anything other than like my shout out is name brand Coke. As somebody who is poor and cheap, not bad. That's my shout out. Absolute crap shout out. Another drink shout out. Somebody needs to tally how many drink shout outs I've had.
Yeah. As a drink shout out guy, have you tried the new spiced Coca-Cola?
It's bad.
Have you really?
It's bad.
You don't like it?
It's bad. You know what?
I think it's fantastic.
I think the thing that pisses me off about it though is the fact that it's literally identical to like, they released a raspberry Coke
raspberry.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
they
was
did.
like it is identical. It's the same drink. It's just
It's almost
repackaged.
yeah. Which
No,
is
it's not
why-
almost.
Which is
It's
why I
identical.
love
It's
it.
the same drink.
It's not. It's not identical. It's not identical, but it is very similar. And that raspberry Coke, like the original one, the BC raspberry Coke
Yeah,
that
yeah.
comes in the bottle.
It's better.
That's my favorite Coke. Like
Okay,
I like
well,
that
that's
better
why you
than
like
the
it.
original flavor.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's my favorite one.
That's.
I think it's
all right.
fantastic.
I don't agree with you on that. I don't think it's bad. I like the BC version a lot better, but than the spiced one.
I do too, but the spiced one I still think is fantastic.
All right.
I think
I
just
tried
like
it.
raspberry apparently.
Yeah, no raspberry. I do like raspberry stuff normally, but like, then again, I will say I don't like flavored Cokes, so maybe that could be it.
Really?
Yeah, like
that might be it.
I
You're not a cherry Coke guy or vanilla Coke. Or...
I don't know. Honestly, I tell this story so much because like outside of the podcast that I wouldn't be shocked if I've told it before, but I'll tell it anyway. Like as a kid, I had a buddy who his dad loved cherry Coke, and this was before flavored Cokes came to Canada. So what they'd do, and they'd go down to Montana for whatever reason, like every summer, because it was just what their family did. And every single time, they just bring back, his dad would literally just bring back an entire van's worth of boxes of cherry Coke. I'm not kidding. Like, he'd bring back 30 boxes. I'm not, like, trust me, I saw
Oh,
their
yeah.
garage. Like, and I remember one time, like, they let me try one. And, like, then again, and this can be tainted with, like, a little bit of, like, little baby Simon had not had very much pop in his time. But, like, it was like, you know the thing where it's like that meme? That's what it was like. So when they finally announced they were bringing Cherry Coke to Canada, I was like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, this is going to be awesome. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Went and bought one. Worst thing ever. It was so much worse. It was so disappointing. And maybe it was because I hyped it up in my own head or like whatever.
Probably.
But it was just like, I was so disappointed. And I honestly, I don't remember the last time I had one since. Like, I think I was so internally let down that I was just like...
I think you should give it another try.
Yeah.
I was a Cherry Coke too until this year, and I started trying them again, and I love them. So
I love cherry flavored stuff. Like, I'm a big cherry guy, but I don't know. I was hurt before.
yeah.
Like, it was, and I know it's the type of thing where, like, I mean, very clearly there are different laws between Canada and America as to what they can put in drinks. That is a big thing, which as to why I'm sure the cherry ones were better, but like I mean I'm probably not wrong on that one, but like it's the type of thing where
Probably not.
Yeah. I'm sure there's quite a difference in sugar and all that stuff, but whatever. I'm sure at some point I don't even know the next time I'll go to America again. Although I will say this was the book shout out again. I'm still reading the same book, by the way, to show you how far. I'm only like 130 pages in too. Like it's still a work in progress.
I finished another book in that time. I've since finished.
I'm a slow reader. I go like 10 pages at a time. I read 10 pages then go to bed.
That's fair.
Yeah, like that's what I do.
That's fair.
Yeah, like, but anyway,
That's valid.
It's making me want to do a Montana fly fishing trip. So at some point in the next like 2 years, I think. At some point when I get a
drive down.
Probably not this. Yeah, that is the nice thing, because it is like only. I'd have to figure out what rivers and all that. But to get to the border of Montana, it's only like maybe 3 hours.
Like a 4
hours, maybe. Like, it's not far. Not even, maybe. I think 2.5, actually. How long? Because I think Lethbridge is fairly close, and I think Lethbridge is only 2.
That's a good question. That's something I can.
Yeah, well, whatever.
Try to check. I think
that's something I've thought of doing in the next little bit, because I think I'm gonna have to do that at some point. I imagine that'll be the next time I go to America, but it won't be this summer.
Okay,
maybe that's a next summer thing, but that's the type of thing where it's just it needs to be at a time when I have money and I'm not working, which no, but yeah, probably not happening anytime soon, but. It's a thought I've had, so that would probably be the next thing I plan on doing. But either way, yeah, I'll buy a cherry. I'll try a cherry Coke then.
There you go.
Yeah,
it's a 3-hour, 16-minute drive to the border.
Okay, yeah, that's about
That's about what we thought.
Yeah, like that's not far. 3-hour drive is nothing, at least to me. It's a lot of gas.
Nope. That is.
All right, well, thank you for watching. See you next week and all that. Check us out, Fresh Take as well, and all that stuff. Check us out on TikTok as well, because now I finally have time to make shorts, so I'm doing that. So go check those out. See you next week.